For sure.
Carrie, you get my message through Letty.
What was it? I had lots.
I was talking all about you.
Your boss as well.
Yes.
Me? Me?
Oh, I have to. Yep. Yep. 18-year. Okay. Nothing. Right now. I said right now. What is it? Something.
Oh,
It is a.
Brandy.
Yeah.
Emailed me yesterday.
I'm sorry.
No, no worries.
For the change from the place.
Yeah.
So I didn't even look at
The laughter was dying down. Every time the door opened.
Yeah.
Right.
It needs to be nice twice.
Yes.
So we're on the same page.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah.
How are you? I'm all right. This is so cute. Oh, thank you. That was,
Oh, well done. Did he have help? Or
oh, I picked it out.
Oh, I see. I was gonna say, different.
He just told me where we were going, and I'm like, oh, good, because I already know what I want.
Oh,
Thank you.
well done. Mr. Merck.
I know. He's learning, right?
Hey, it sounds like you've got him well trained.
Howdy.
Oh, thank you for holding Colton's hand. I had just kind of given him those things. You're the expert.
Yeah, expert.
I was like, that's what I said I would do. If you'll finish the document, I'll put it on.
I was like, I don't know if I've been doing it correctly for 10 years. Nobody's told me otherwise. This is how I do it.
Only the funds.
That's funny.
That's true.
Oh, it's so much warmer down here. It's freezing.
So.
You know what I was just in morning about?
What?
59.
Yeah, thank you.
His daughter.
Because I've got a little, because it gets hot in there too.
Right.
So I've got a fan, and the fan tells the temperature.
Yeah,
in the
and then
room.
you really
So,
know. Because I feel like such a complainer when I call Keith and say, I can't feel my fingers.
so he knows
Tammy is.
when,
Don't verify.
when I call him sexy.
Hey, son.
Fat and furry, so it takes a lot for me to be cold. So
It was
it's
freezing
like
yesterday.
if Cody's cold, then normal people are freezing.
Like I couldn't function. My eyes were running.
And then it like freezes as it's coming in.
So yeah, like everything in me is trying to go.
gosh,
I literally was on the phone and I thought, well, I can wander the building and find the warmest spot to talk in.
To a portion that's been trying to squeeze them here.
Alright. Brandy? Yeah, we'll wait just a minute for Brandy.
My favorite, my father. Very much. And welcome to him. Where have you been? It's hard to confuse sexes.
Homes, they all look alike.
Oh, it's run amok.
Yeah.
True.
Thanks to Brandon's reminder, I got phones and everything.
Oh, good.
I thought about texting you, you know, saying, hey, I
Well, I
remember.
could have sent you a reminder.
Yeah. It's probably me.
But he's got you covered.
Yeah.
That's good.
Every meeting in history.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you're in it or not.
Yeah. That's fun. All right, we'll call this meeting to order. This is the Thursday, April 6th special meeting of the budget evaluation team. Let's see here. Notice the meeting was properly posted on Tuesday, April 4th. Believe, let's go ahead, and we had skipped court services briefly the other day. Mr. Billingsley is here.
Thank you. And Cody, thank you, and everybody else for letting me come today. Appreciate that. All right, we on general fund?
Yeah.
Okay, general fund, as you know, this is for our salary and benefits only. We don't ask for anything, need anything out of this fund other than those things. There is a small cell phone in there, but otherwise it's all salary and benefits, not asking for anything different or more or less or addition. So there's really nothing more in that fund, unless there's any questions on it.
Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, we can go to 1260-3010. This is our special revenue, kind of like the general fund. This one, we don't ask for any money, don't need any money. This is fees that are collected. Those fees that are collected are used to cover our M&O costs. Some of those are pretty stagnant, stay the same. Some kind of go up and down, but for the most part, our fees cover everything out of the M&O, out of the special revenue. So again, kind of like the general fund, not asking for anything or anything out of the ordinary on that one here. So any questions on that? If not, we can go to the next one, 1260-3020. Oh, is that it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm a little slow today. Okay, so this is our Indigent fund. This is our GPS program to cover the costs for folks that get out of jail. We put an ankle monitor on them, and it covers those costs that otherwise would have been incurred by those folks. We are, let's see, going to need, before the end of this fiscal year, again, some more money. I know the last time you guys sent over some funds, they held back about, I think it was $19,000, just to see how it went. And it looks like we're probably gonna need about 12 more to finish this fiscal year. I'll get an exact total for the next BET probably for that, but we'll need a little bit to finish the last couple months of our monthly invoice we get from Atenti. However, for the next fiscal year, I know there's been some conversation. Typically what we've done is when the money dwindles down, we come in, we ask for money, you guys put it in, and then it goes throughout the year. But there's also been conversation of just putting it all in at the beginning of the fiscal year, a larger sum to just cover it for the year, which I'd be probably more than happy to do that if we can. With that being said, I'm asking for $100,000 in that. There's the growth of the program for starters. So it's roughly, to be a safe guess, about $5,000 a month on the monthly amount for the activation fees for the folks on the ankle monitor. But then there's also a growth of the lost bracelet amount. So just put it in perspective, the previous year, the bill was about $15,000 to cover lost bracelets. This one that we just paid recently was $32,000. So I estimated we'll just put it at 40 for that, with about 60,000 for the monthly fees, so 100,000. That's what I went with.
Could you refresh my memory? What was that number last year?
For
What number did you ask for last year?
you asked the hard questions, Brandy.
I
I didn't ask for anything last year in here.
right.
Because
Okay.
it was one of those things where typically
You
what
still
we've
had
done,
some left over.
yeah, typically what we've done is we came in and they put $50,000 in,
Right.
we dwindle it down, then it could be
61.
September
Okay.
or whatever day, and then we ask for another 50, and then it just
Right.
What we did last year was we took the anticipated amount that he was gonna have in his account to start July 1, and added whatever number we needed to get to the 100,000 mark-ish.
Right.
And so that was in anticipation that he would have 49 or $39,000 left in there, so we had moved 61. That was, we tried to do that beginning last year, and I think that is a good approach. If it's something that we are going to be spending money on every year, we need to make sure that we're budgeting a good amount, an accurate amount as best as possible in there. My concern is the loss.
Yeah, that's,
Ankle monitors, because we're limited on the amount of money that we have to put into that program anyway.
Right.
And if we are losing, I mean, you're talking a 60-40 split, 40% of that budget is because of lost bracelets. How many of those lost bracelets, how much of that $40,000 would you attribute to your group?
so the last invoice that went through, the 32,000 that we paid, 26,000 was not us. So, the rest was, I think it was 4 total bracelets that we lost, which is actually very, very low, that we lost. So the amount that we pay for those folks is very small. The 26,000 or other groups that utilize our GPS system and supervise those folks, and we put the ankle monitor on, and pretty much we don't supervise the person, we kind of supervise the ankle monitor. We make sure it stays charged and they don't cut it off and all that, but the supervision part of the person is not on us, and those are all ordered by the courts. So the majority of them, of that 26,000 comes from team clients that cut their ankle monitors on. The others would be drug court, mental health court, and then us.
Well, I would think that we need to look at an MOU moving forward. I think the DA's office has mentioned that in the past with those other entities, but if we're providing a service like that, I think that if they can't recover the ankle monitors, that
Well,
it should
they-
be something that they are paying for and
And
reimbursing the county for that expense.
On that, even the recovery part is we have to do that. Also, even though we're not supervising the person, we're on the hook basically to do our part to recover those bracelets also.
But you're not the one that has the relationship with that individual because you're not working with that individual.
Correct.
So, yeah, I think we could increase our ability to expand, other services in your department if we weren't footing the bill for 40% of this budget just in lost ankle monitors.
Well, that's just in the lost ones, and there's the activation fees also.
Sure, but I'm talking about
But
things
as far
that
as
we can try to
that portion, right?
And how much of that is drug court and mental health court versus not?
So just for example, at any given time, let's say we roughly have about 100 people on an ankle monitor. We've gotten to the point now where about half are indigent, half are pay. Of the ones that pay would be all ours. Of the indigent folks, about 75% of those would be those other groups I mentioned, and then the rest would be us. So
I only
Just
ask
to-
because it's my understanding they are going to have possibly some additional funding, and so now might be a good time to say, if we need you to step up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is what we do. We're more than happy to put ankle monitors on people. This is what we do. It gets people out of jail. It serves a purpose for the courts. We're more than happy to do it. But again, at the same time, there's a funding piece also. So again, we're happy to do whatever is best. So with that,
I just see that as a way of us reinvesting 40% of just dead money. It's just loss, right? I see us being able to take that 40% and actually do more good with it, and maybe be able to increase the amount that's available for the judges to put indigent folks on there because we got more money available for more ankle monitors.
Absolutely. So, so, and I know you'll decide, do you want me to come back to the next BET and request that small amount to get through the fiscal year? And then with this for the next fiscal year to fund that amount?
Yes.
Is that, okay, perfect. Sounds good. Okay, last one is the Shine Fund. So, and again, bear with me, this is, I know you guys all know, this is new for me and a new program, so I'm still, getting it all figured out, especially, the funding piece as well. But again, this is a special revenue account. So it looks like we will collect in fees about $178,000 in collection of fees. To run the program, meaning salary and benefits and your typical day-to-day M&O is about $260,000. I did add, and Brandy helped me with this, another van that we may or may not need, but more than likely will need at some point because it has very high mileage. And so it's, there has to be and I don't know, I've asked around a little bit, if there's a threshold on mileage on vehicles that, I don't know.
When it stops in the middle of the road.
Just
won't
Pretty
go
much
any
for the
further.
county, that's kind of the standard.
When
it
they
doesn't
have
work
to
anymore.
push
Yes, yes.
for their hours.
Right.
Right. So I added that in there. So I know it looks like we're collecting less money than what it takes to run the department. However, there's some past, Brandy helped me with this, donations that have came in from outside groups that was large sums that have been sitting there that are being used to supplement the extra amount needed to fund the department. Those aren't guaranteed, those aren't yearly, those are maybe a one time, maybe could happen again. I don't know.
Well, and you also have a scenario which you are currently under contracts that are not being fully exhausted, just due to manpower and resources. And so there's some potential there. And then, of course, like you said, the van, that's a one-time expense.
Right.
So that's not something that will typically, affect the bottom line. And so that's a substantial jump for your grand total budget request.
Yeah, that was 45.
Yeah, thereabouts. And of course, that's a very fluid number with the economy right now and supply chain, as Brayden, I'm sure, knows all too well. But that is a rough estimate. It may be 3 years before you get the thing, but that's usually what the new rate was the last time we inquired about it. So really, I mean, all things considered, you're going to be netting about even. All things considered.
Okay. And any questions on it so far with this fund?
No, I would just, continue to learn and see what you can do. You do have, it looks like that money sitting in there to help offset, because if you take the 40,000, that's $271,000. That's still about almost $100,000 more if you take the van out of an expense than what your revenue is. So you've got enough there to float you for a couple years to get this going.
Well, the 260 that I mentioned was minus the van. Plus the van was 311. I think so.
Right.
With the van, 311.
Yeah, would say 271 without.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You take the van. You take the van out, it's 271.
Gotcha.
You've got basically $170,000 in here for revenue for next year. So your expenses 271 without the van versus income of 170. There's $100,000 difference there. You've got the carryover that'll help you for the next couple of years. I'm just saying it's something that over time we're going to have to track, or we're going to, if there's not a change in the utilization of contracts or whatever, then we'll have to make a decision, a couple of years down the road, whether, we're going to infuse with general fund, or do we cut back, or whatever needs to happen there. I'm just saying that let's kind of keep that in mind, in the next 2 or 3 years. I kind of look at this as the way Planning Commission was for a while. They were receiving enough money that they didn't need any general fund allocation in there, and they rocked along, but it got to a point to where they couldn't, and then we had to start having some discussions. So please keep us in the loop ahead of time if you anticipate needing some, so we can start preparing ourselves.
Absolutely.
can we look at the salary page? I noticed you've got 2 new positions in there. Is that just demand or is
So
that-
prior to turning the department over to me, they were short, and I could mess this up, I think they were
Right.
down to 1 crew chief.
Yeah.
And then they were able to hire 2 more full-time
Mhm.
as well as a part-time.
Yes, so demand, Christie, yes, is exactly what it was.
And so currently the part-time position is open. And so I've been in talks with Karen and trying to learn more about the department to really get a flow of exactly what the needs are, to find out the best way to utilize that position, duties and what they would be doing that would benefit the department as a whole. So as soon as we come up with that, we're gonna post the position.
Now, you don't
So-
have money down in part-time. Where's the part-time person in this budget?
It's all under new positions.
Oh, I see part-time. Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
So you had a 1 part-time and 1 full-time in new positions. So essentially, you have 1 admin person, which is listed up front, and then you have 2 full-time crew chiefs listed up top. Ideally, to be fully staffed, you want 3 full-time crew chiefs because we have 3 vehicles. There's 2 passenger vans and then a graffiti truck. And so ideally, to be considered fully staffed, you want a crew chief per each vehicle. And then you have a part-time person that can kind of float, because it's a 7-day-a-week program. And so the part-timer is good to help supplement the weekends and then the days off during the week where the full-time people need days off and things like that.
Which that's the one thing while we're looking at the part-time is more than likely I'd like to move it to a full-time, mainly because of what you just said.
Yes,
Because we don't want
Yes.
to run into a situation where it is a 7-day-a-week,
it is. And so
Operation.
that makes it
And
more
there's only-
difficult.
with 3 people driving.
Right,
We don't want to run into a situation where, any given day, the 2 people who are scheduled to work,
Mhm.
it's gonna happen. I mean, people are human, they're sick. And then the 3rd individual who's off, for whatever reason, cannot come into work. These are folks that are court ordered to do community service. They show up at a certain time at a certain place to do these hours. And if there's not enough people to show up one day,
Right.
that
if
doesn't
you have
look
30
good.
people show up and 1
Yeah.
crew chief, it makes it very difficult,
Right, or no crew chiefs.
right?
And then,
Right.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
that hasn't happened, but,
Right.
but I'm telling you, between,
Parents crew chief for the day.
Exactly.
right, between the 3 departments now that I have and the different funds, that what we're talking about right now is about the only thing that really keeps me up at night. I mean, these are, like I said, court order folks that have to have this done, and potentially if it's due the next day and they show up to do it and there's no one there to do it, so we need to be fully staffed, not just, okay, that should be enough.
Right.
Which it may seem like too many, however, we gotta be really careful with making sure we're covering what we need to cover,
Mhm.
so.
On the printout, that must be why I missed it. The little PT down under new positions just isn't printing out on here, so that's why.
Oh.
I don't know if it just cut it off or that PT was added later, just so everyone,
Yeah,
if
it's
anyone
not
wants to
on the
write it in.
attachment.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll update
Grant, I know
I just wrote it in.
6 months ago, before you got Shine, you were an extremely busy director doing lots of important things for the county. And you've taken on a huge addition to your, you got a second full-time gig.
Right.
And you've been hitting the ground running, trying to figure some stuff out. And I really appreciate your willingness to step up and do what you can. It's,
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate
we
everybody.
have good
trusting me
employees here. We have great employees at the county, and you are one of them.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate you guys trusting me to take over another department. Believe me, I'm reaching out to all of you and budget board commissioners and everybody with assistance. I mean, without participants, without, the courts and everything else, is what makes Shine run. So we want to make it the best as we possibly can and do great things for the county, the cities, and everything. So I'm committed to do that. So we'll make it work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grant.
Anything else?
That's good.
I don't think so. Is there a motion to receive those estimated needs?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grant.
KK,
Yes,
let's go ahead and do HR.
that would be HRKK.
KK. I like
Oh,
it.
sorry, Karen Kent?
Can any department besides District 1 use that? Or is that strictly a District 1
That,
term?
well, I mean, if
off
you,
limit?
if you'd like to violate my trademark,
Oh, I like it. I like it. It's cute. KK.
Are we ready? I'll just tell y'all real quick, we had a little episode in the parking garage before I came in. We have an employee that was having a really bad anxiety attack and started having a seizure. So we called the ambulance and the fire department's over there with him now to try to take care of him and get him home safe. It's one of yours.
That's one of ours?
Mm-hmm. So Denise is there, just to let you know.
Okay.
People heard the ambulance and stuff, that's what it
Probably.
is.
That's one of our new.
I think. Okay.
All right.
Are we ready? I'm not sure I am, but we'll do it. I know we're probably gonna have a flatline budget going in anyway, but I went ahead and do my estimate of needs of what I would like to have for our department as we go further as far as my safety and the HR piece. The salaries and wages, we are not on the employees yet, but I would like to be able to hire another full-time HR person. My other, that we have as an HR person has decided that she does not do recruiting well, and she is more of our program administrator, like for FIMLA, leave sharing. She's kind of the backup for everything. So I'm really needing another HR person to help with training and with recruiting. So that's why I've asked that. So that's that little bit of increase in my salary on that line. Mileage, I added a little bit there.
So Karen, just real quick, if we can't get you money for another HR generalist, who's gonna do your recruiting? Is this employee, are you saying they're saying it's just not their specialty, so they'd rather do other things, or that
They are struggling with the recruiting and making sale of the recruitment job, and they're not comfortable with it. And so she's still doing some of the sourcing for us, like online. She'll go post jobs for us and stuff. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
you're
calling
fine.
at
You're
you.
fine. Yeah, you're fine.
And, she's just not comfortable doing it. But we have other things that she's currently doing that are just as important. And if we don't hire another HR generalist to help with the training and the recruitment, I've been doing it now, since that's kind of happened, since she's kind of shifted into a previous position. So right now, it's Christy and I pretty much, with Miranda helping with the FMLA, sick leave, all of the nation sick leave, and et cetera. But we've just been really swamped, and we'll do what we have to do to keep going if we don't get a position. Mileage was my other one. As most of you know, I've hired another safety person, and he is out in the yards a lot more than previous safety people. So we have to pay him mileage to go out to the yards sometimes. We do have a truck that one of the districts has allowed us to use, so we only have to pay for gas for it. But it's got 200,000 miles on it, so we're holding our breath like we did with the Shine thing, that we don't break down. But for now it's well, but we are using more gasoline and mileage next time. Postage, the printing and binding, that was just kind of like the cost of everything's gone up. The memberships, one of my safety staff would like to be very certified in all areas of safety, and those could be sometimes up to $500 for a certification. But I want to be able to help them get that certification and keep it. I still help a little bit. And equipment vendors, is that what I have there? Yeah. We have some machinery that safety use that we have to have it recalibrated every year. And it's costing us more to get it recalibrated than it is to buy new, which is really odd. But if we do go ahead and buy it, we're probably gonna have to have a little bit more in there. Where are we now? I'm lost, sorry.
Fuel?
Fuel. Okay, yeah, we talked about that a little bit with having the extra person on staff now. The uniforms wearing apparel, I put that in there as well with everybody capable of going out to the yards. Everyone that steps onto a job site, district yard, is supposed to have steel-toe boots on. And if I make them do that, then I feel like I have to buy them a pair every year. As far as the safety apparel as well as the vest, etc. Safety supplies, this is stuff like bandages, AED, sometimes the batteries. We kind of take from that in time. We just spent like $5,000 on batteries for the AEDs. So that took a real hit on us this year. Office supplies, again, cost going up. Professional services, I just raised that a little bit because we're still trying to do a background checks with a firm or software that we haven't been able to do yet. And then computer equipment, like I said, everything's going up. My staff's probably gonna have new laptops sometime next year. So that's my Christmas wish list.
On the background checks, didn't we fund that this year?
We did fund it, it's still in there. We have not used it. We've had some problems with getting a contract approved to be able to use a couple of them. And some of the verbiage that we sent.
Any other questions? You mentioned a safety person being back. It's good to see Brad in the hallways and moving around and stuff.
Yep, he
It's
is
nice
back,
to have
he's doing
Brad
a
back.
great job at the workers' comp and out of the yard for the district. I think that's it, unless I have other questions. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. All right. Make sure we get everybody. All right, county clerk.
Motion to receive estimate of needs for HR.
Second. Good job.
We got a motion and a second to receive those estimate needs. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Randy.
I'm up.
Oh, did we?
I don't know, did we miss receiving grants as well?
No, we
didn't.
received.
Okay.
All right. So we officially have a new elected official, starting on Monday, so that's positive news for us. With that, so we're keeping our budget pretty flat this year. The only thing that is on the general fund is the approved raise for the elected official. And we did not ask for anything during the current year because we didn't have one. So this is the full amount. And then as well as the chief deputy increase. And then on the fringe, there was just some changes in family and single coverage. So that's kind of the increase there. So the rest is flat on general funds. If there's any questions on that?
Just a quick question, because you do have a new elected official.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that you all might come back with any changes?
Not for general fund.
Okay.
And then we do have 3 special revenue funds, the lien fee, UCC, and preservation fund. We have noticed this year that revenues are a little bit down compared to years before because of kind of the prices going up and people filing less. So, but we manage our budgets. We live within our means, so there's not going to be any difference there. I can pull them up for you if you want to. lien fee. So the revenues are somewhat down from last year. We're gonna expect that. We do also want to, of course, support the assessor's office and Tim with all the work that he does and that we use, the GSI and the ESRI program. So we will do whatever and help to promote that and do whatever is needed to grow that program because we're all in. So
Great, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Central filing, UCC, and the preservation fund. We really, since we didn't have an elected official pretty much all year, we kind of, our expenditures were down, so that's kind of positive. So.
Working on it.
I don't know if there's any questions. We're down on personnel, so there's some vacancies that we need to fill. But with the new elected official, we don't quite know if they bring in people or not. So we kind of sat still on that. So it's kind of anticipation.
As it should be.
Yeah. So we haven't done anything out of the ordinary.
Okay. Are there any questions related to any of the estimate of needs that the county clerk has prepared? If not, is there a motion to receive?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Court clerk, Amy? Whatever makes you happy. Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Okay. Basically, overall, we are almost a flat budget. The only thing we're asking for is in our salaries. We are asking for the increase in the court clerk and the chief deputy. And I used the $130,000.8750 amount. I didn't use the other one.
That's great.
Oh, that's correct. Okay, very good. And then, if you look under our deputy court clerks, I have included an increase of $345,000 for next fiscal year. Part of that is the increase that we were given this year for the 8.5%. It affected this year's budget, and then it's affecting next year's budget. We do have a pay band scale that we are sticking to and trying to keep everybody increasing along those same levels. So, and then out of that,
I don't understand that.
You're gonna have to explain. Well, like, we got our 8.5% last year, but it also increased our pay band scale by, we increased what people started out at, if that makes more sense.
Well, but you got 8.5% more across the board into your budget.
Yes,
And now you're asking for more on top of that.
yes. To keep everybody,
I think when we're looking at COLAs, we're anticipating what that cost is to keep everybody at their same spending power that they were the year
It's
before.
already accounted for.
Yeah, it's already accounted for, and I understand what you're saying about your pay scales and your pay bands. But if we start having to factor that in, then that's going to be difficult to even look at a COLA period because everybody is in that same boat. We're pay banded, in our office as well. But we can't, if we're going to turn around and do adjustments on top of COLAs to make adjustments to pay bands, that's gonna increase the whole budget dramatically. So
How many pay bands do you have, like, for the court clerks? Like, so if one starts out at X amount, how many different bands are, you know?
Or just for like the deputy court clerks or.
Yeah, it's like that hundred,
Yes.
that 100.
Well, we have several different layers in there.
Okay.
And within the different layers, there's 3. And
and,
then there's 4.
and the other thing, an 8.5% COLA doesn't necessarily change your entry level pay. Say your entry level pay is $17 an hour, and that's what you're starting people out at, and you hired somebody, right before July 1 last year, and they were making $17 an hour. Well, when that COLA comes in, they're going to get 8.5% more than that $17 an hour. But that doesn't mean that somebody that hires in September or October has to hire in at the $17 an hour plus 8.5%. They would be at the $17 an hour what that pay scale is, and then they would be eligible for any merit-based raises or any COLAs on top of that. But I don't think the 8.5% is meant to raise and adjust any pay bands. Not saying that elected officials and department heads can't do that, but if they do, that's got to be managed within the budget and not looking at that being an adjustment to that actual wage because of the COLA, if that makes sense.
So on top of what I just said about the 8.5%, out of that, we have 190,000 budgeted for the raises, for continuing our pay parity to keep everybody on track. So that's where the 345,000 come from.
The pay parity, I thought we were.
Well, we're still trying to keep everybody going forward. We still are just trying to keep everybody on the same schedule, our pay bands,
That's Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, as I understood it, it's just 2.5% raises if everyone that's there July 1 is there at the end of the year, that there are some steps out.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
So that was put in at 2.5%.
Okay, so it's basically a 2.5% merit base, not pay equity.
That's my
Right,
understanding.
okay.
Okay.
For all of your 134 deputy court clerks?
Mhm.
And are you fully staffed at 134 right
I
now?
believe so. We may be looking to hire some part-timers, we're anticipating a move. But that we would, just work within our budget, but right now we are fully staffed.
Yeah, and there's some legislation being introduced, and the title's off of it right now, so we don't know how it's gonna end up. That it's gonna change the court cost compliance, which may require us to hire some new people, depending on how the bill comes out.
Is the court fund going to be able to pick up some of those costs of those changes?
Not real sure.
Okay, because I know Judge Andrews came over and was talking to us a while back, and it was kind of about the cleaning, and I can't remember exactly what that. We include revenue from the court fund for cleaning at the courthouse, like, was it $600,000, something like that a year? And none of that has been received yet into the county, so we're kind of short on some of our revenue on that. And so we were talking to him about how we could, make that better, and there was discussion about maybe changing the way that's done and looking at salaries instead or whatever, and he was gonna, visit with Jerry Askins.
Oh, okay.
And all that. So I didn't know if there was any movement or anything on that.
You know, that's, for the most part, that's pass-through money, and that's gonna be Judge Andrews and Jerry.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Do you know about the courthouse, the cleaning and that kind of stuff? Because that's revenue that we booked in as anticipated revenue for this current fiscal year, last year.
I think
But
that,
none of it's been, I know invoices have been submitted, but nothing's been paid. Do we need to have a conversation about that before we include that in our revenue for next year?
I believe that's a question that needs to be asked to Mr. Warren and Judge Andrews. We
Okay.
have it.
Yeah.
We have it. It's in our estimate of needs, but that's a question not for me or Amy.
Well, but you're in a position to be able to get that answer from your boss and bring it back to us, right?
I don't believe I am. Respectfully. I believe that's a conversation that needs to be had at a higher level.
Okay, I'm not trying to
I understand.
to get a particular answer, like it has to be this answer. My concern is if we're not gonna get it, do we need to know that now so we don't book it in as revenue that we're gonna receive? Does that make sense? Because if the answer's no, the answer's no. If the answer's yes, it's yes. I'm not here advocating for one answer over the other. It's just, we need to know, because that's $600,000 of income that we either have or we don't have coming in next year. And when we're looking at setting a balanced budget, it's just, I think it's important that we know.
Yeah, and like I said, I believe that's a conversation at a much higher level than me or Amy.
And everything else, if you go to the page above that page, we left everything the same for travel, E&O, and capital. So
All right. There any other questions?
Motion to receive.
Second.
Got a motion to receive and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you guys.
Good job, Amy.
No Keith, no Stacey.
No. Treasurer?
What?
Oh, you've already done yours. I'm sorry. Court clerk's done theirs, assessor. I guess sheriff. You're the only one around the table that hasn't given theirs yet, right? Okay, but before you start, let me see who we have left.
I'm showing engineer.
Facilities, engineer,
Keith.
the jail
Is the jail
last.
gonna be here today?
At 11.
Okay. And then what about employee benefits, workers' comp, and self-insurance?
They will have to go to regular meeting. John was out a couple of days and just ran out of time.
Okay.
We'll add those to the
It's
regular
Tuesday.
BET. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well, if anybody is watching, facilities and engineering should head on this way when they get a chance. Other than that, sheriff's office is up.
We have 4 accounts like we normally do. A general fund, and then a service fee, a special revenue, and a grant fund. In general fund, a few things we did there was, under the M&O section, last year we submitted it as cell phone stipend of $1080, but for some reason it came back over that it was $6,000. So that, I don't know, I guess maybe when we did a flat budget last year, it wasn't updated, but those were the numbers that we actually submitted last year, so we just corrected that. Obviously, it's just a big pot, but so M&O is flat. The reason for the increase in the salaries and wages and the additional fringe, that's for the other half of the raises from last year when we come in and ask for the increase, and the board I actually believe it was Christie's idea to come up with a plan to do a 2-year plan. And so we were given half of it the first year of the 1.1 or so million dollars. And this is the second half of that request. For some reason, I don't know why, and I actually had Micah and Aaron Spitzer both confirm it. Our benefits numbers went crazy this year, and I don't know why. We had one person less on single insurance and 12 new ones on family. It's pretty common for our department to have a lot of internal moves. So maybe an SRO comes over to a patrol spot, or maybe a person from courthouse goes to patrol, or one of those things. We've had a lot of internal moves, so I don't know if that's part of it. I didn't really take a deep dive, but I did have people confirm that our benefits did in fact go up $280,000 for those specifically assigned to general fund. That's I guess that's the unfortunate thing. You have 171 people pulling from one fund, so no new employees. Again, the reason for the increase is just the other half of the raise that was last year that was recommended by the board that we approached. So as a reminder, we asked for, again, quick numbers, 1.1 million, and the board was gracious enough, and the budget board was gracious enough to give us half, and we used our service fee money. Basically, ARPA money was able to cover the other half of that. So we did give the full raise last year. Half of it was on my general fund. The other half was on the ARPA in anticipation we'd be able to come back this year and ask for the additional amount. So that's also why on the salary comp sheet, you notice that there is a raises under both of them. It looks like we're making adjustments for FY24 when technically we're not. That's how I was told to put that information down, so that way it shows both years. That's why it looks like the sheriff, for example, is getting a raise in 2 years, and then everybody else the COLA, and then also the parity. There was no line to specifically put the parity in there, so that's why it's broken up over the course of 2 fiscal years, rather than all being in last fiscal year. I guess the current fiscal year. So that general fund is it is an increase, but it's relatively simple on why. As far as 1160. Really, 1160, 1161, 1162, all three of these funds, none of those come out of general fund. Those are all money that either we earn or that are made, through various means. In 1160, that's pretty much where we try to take care of all of our maintenance and operation as best we can. So that's where all of our our postage, our the memberships, any type of internet or whatever it is we're paying for comes out of that stuff. All of the employees on the 1160 are reimbursed by somebody, so they're like community services, those SROs, those are reimbursed. The treasurer, that's reimbursed by the treasurer's office. The BBA, Oklahoma OCCJA, those are jail employees. Well, they're not jail employees. They're at the behest of the jail. So we do all the transportation of those inmates that come over from the jail to the courthouse. That's also the 4 employees that are on the 11th floor of the jail. The reason I'm kind of going into a little bit of history,
Thank you.
And so courthouse security, we try to pay as many as we can out of that. There's a fund that comes through. So to try to offset some of that money from the general fund, we try to offset as much of that as we can. That usually comes in around $30,000 or so a month. So we do the best we can. Sometimes we do have to transfer it to service fee and try to offset that. But we do try to pay for it as much courthouse security out of that as we can, even though courthouse security generates us far less than what we actually need to keep the complex safe. And then
Is that done by contract?
It's not.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just another service fee that comes in again via one of the statutory allowances that we have.
Okay.
And then Metrotech, that hasn't changed. Palomar, we did enter into a contract with Palomar, which was approved. And then after some of the recent school shootings, a lot of SROs were generated for various schools again, which those are reimbursed positions. We're in the process of doing some pretty substantial negotiations with the school to change those fee structures. So this year we should anticipate a relatively sizable increase on what's reimbursed by the schools. So 1161, there's only one employee that comes out of that. because it's called a special revenue fund. It's extremely restricted. And so there's several different sources of that money. So there's a drug fund, that's the federal asset forfeiture stuff, which you're probably familiar with. Training fund, 911, so ACOG money. So again, all the stuff you're familiar with. So that money that comes in, very specific restrictions. It's not stuff that can be used for salaries generally. The only one that we have that can be used for salaries is the 911 fees, and we do pay Jill, which is our dispatch supervisor, out of those 911 fees. And 911, obviously, you can imagine it takes a lot of money to keep that program running. So we don't put a lot more employees in that fund, just because we want to make sure that when somebody picks up the phone, dials 911, somebody's able to answer. A lot of computer equipment and so on that goes on with that. Drug fund is very specific on what it can be used for. Federal asset forfeiture, some of those things can be used for capital. Very specific training circumstances can't be used for salaries. So it's so a lot of times what will end up happening, you'll see what appears to be a sizable carryover at 1161, and they're like, well, why don't you use that money that you can't?
Yeah.
So that's that. And then 1162 is a grant fund. Really the only thing, there's 2 employees that are paid out of that. And I feel like I'm talking directly to you, but I'm not. So Dawn was not. So 1162 is the 2 employees that are paid out of their traffic safety. They're fully reimbursed by the Oklahoma Highway Safety Office, and so they go around and they do education as far as how to stay safe in icy conditions, or they do the drunk goggles, the impaired goggles, some of those things with schools, and always busy. I mean, they're always pulling a trailer somewhere and doing rollover simulators, and seeing what the dummy does when you don't buckle them up and he throws them across the school parking lot. Some of those things for the kids and for anybody that has to be kids. And then the JAG grant, it's kind of a pass through. Sounds like a grant, but it's really not. But essentially, that's what sustains our radio infrastructure. So it's money that comes to us, and then we immediately just kind of pass it back through to Oklahoma City, because they by far have the most robust radio communication platform that's, around. Even multi-statewide. So you probably even remember David Barnes mentioning the Oklahoma City system. That's what he meant. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's as clear as you and I are talking. So, which is obviously helpful in a situation when you need it.
Sure.
So even our budget, just because of the nature of where we are as an office in the county, it's relatively flat. Again, I say relatively flat. Obviously, there's an increase in the general fund, but that's because it's just a follow up from last year. So it's the other half of what we had asked for from last year. So that is where we are. Happy to entertain any questions.
Total staff's what, 230-ish?
No, it's 219.
219.
Yeah, hang on, let me make sure here. Hang on.
I just texted Keith and
I was already on it.
We should all text.
get several.
Yeah.
That's funny. 8 text messages.
There they are.
Hey, Stace. 219.
Ah, there he is.
Wow.
Keith?
Thank you.
Well, it's about time.
I'm not good. 10:30.
We're efficient.
We are Johnny on the
They couldn't wait, Stacey. They needed some good news. I know. Where's the live button? I want to push it.
You're in the future.
Oh, I am.
Motion to receive estimate of needs from
We
the
got-
sheriff.
We have a motion to receive and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Stacey, I guess since you're standing up, we'll let you go first.
Cool. I request a budget cut, $48,781.
Is there a motion to
Done.
receive?
Thank you.
Brandon.
Is there any discussion about his budget?
Yeah, this inflation on your
I like the
part-time
inflation
person.
note.
Yeah.
Do what?
This inflation,
Your
this note that
part-time
you have
person's
for your
inflating.
part-time?
It's like me at a buffet.
That's probably a typo.
What?
Did you say
Inflation?
I said it's like me at a buffet on a person.
I was saying your
Stop it.
part-time person's inflating.
Well, we could use that note on all of our estimates and fees.
Yeah.
It's just inflation.
Always a gift.
But see, with the inflation, how he worked within his budget to get it covered.
Uh-huh,
Mhm.
uh-huh,
Asking.
right.
Just like jokes.
He is.
Very, very clever.
Good job.
All right, is there a motion to receive?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Stacey, thank you.
Again,
That's Jessica telling you to get down here.
yeah.
Keith, you need to put that in theater mode.
Yeah.
I learned that yesterday.
We have a theater
I
mode.
know, no.
Or not. Yes. It's great.
Yeah.
I can't believe you haven't used that before.
He just left.
We okay?
Oh, yeah. Alright, so the crises du jour.
Du jour.
Du jour of the day. I am paperless. I am helpless. My admin is out. Chris Ponder is out with a broken leg, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, he's on crutches. He suffers this from time to time. I'd asked him about their budget. Sorry.
Good thing he's not a race
You're not involved with that?
So, yeah, and so it's been some time since I've looked at these numbers. Sandy,
Yeah, Keith, you need to settle down a little bit.
I'm just trying to get through here, but
No, I'm
the
talking
phone's
about
gonna
you.
ring again.
If you have your employees.
I told Jessica to stop.
You're breaking their
constantly
legs.
injuring
Yeah.
themselves. They trying to fix those two doors on the east side of the courthouse?
We finally got somebody to at least come out and look at it. And that's probably a good place to begin, because our staffing level, we haven't been able to hire people, let alone technically equipped people, electricians, HVAC guys. So it really doesn't matter what we put in the budget. We provided for some of that in hopes that we can attract and keep those kind of folks specifically and importantly, to support and look over another layer of safety, the projects that we have going on all over the place, particularly in this building. I know you've heard me whine and cry before, but all it takes is one miswired wire on the electrical circuit for the lighting, and the entire building goes down. We had that happen once last year, and my guess is it's going to happen numerous times again. So, trying to find people that are qualified is a challenge.
His glasses definitely have full.
Really, your only increase looks like the two new positions.
Mm-hmm. We interviewed yesterday
I was being.
electricians. Hopefully we can attract and hire someone. 2 new spots, and we've got, I think, 5 vacancies now.
So you want to fill all your vacancies and then two new.
more.
Yeah. And that, that's a challenge. I doubt we can get that done with what we're paying here. We're trying to move those pay scales up, but it just doesn't help. So we're resorting to outside contractors when we can get them to show up. And the glass doors is a perfect example. I can't get those guys here for 2 weeks. So to try and continue to utilize the people and staff we have here is what we're challenged with, what we're stuck with.
And we're getting ready to lose some.
Yeah.
John Dennis.
Big institutional knowledge. I mean,
Yeah.
huge when John Dennis is gone.
Another approach here.
Let me say this real quick. We have decided for the most part that we're gonna kind of operate, our recommendation is gonna be to operate off of a standstill budget.
Mhm.
But if there are a few things here and there that need funding immediately, we would look at that. On new employees, I don't necessarily know that would be an immediate funding need, because you would have the
That's
rest
right.
of your budget at the
Of
very
those
beginning of the
unfilled
year.
positions, yes.
But what I'm getting at is, you do need more people, just my opinion, facilities needs more people. I would recommend at the beginning of our fiscal year that you get us a number to put on the watch list. I don't wanna, when you're struggling to get people, just to stay at the status quo, let alone get more.
Yeah.
I don't wanna park a whole bunch of money if we can't attract those people. But if we can get it on the watch list and you are out recruiting and you're like, okay, I can get X amount of people, I need X amount of dollars.
That's
then we
the
can look at
thinking.
that.
That's the thinking here, knowing that we're suffering this challenge. But I wanted it on the estimate of needs and asked that it be put here. So when everybody's in the room, we can again begin to discuss the kinds of problems that we have here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where it needs
And
to
it's
be.
not just people, it's technical people. So for example, one of the electricians we interviewed yesterday came in at a figure almost $20,000 more than what our licensed electricians are making today. So, and then, does the guy show up? Does he get a call someplace else? Is he simply using us to advantage himself? We've had that happen. So, anyhow. Some other areas are of increases here. You'll see vendor repair, some of the repair costs for machinery, pieces of equipment, HVAC systems, those kinds of things have all escalated, and it's the best we can do to begin to estimate what those kinds of things are going to cost additionally based on the price increases we've seen over the last year or so. So anywhere from a 15 to 20% escalation on materials and parts when you can get them. So 59 degrees, 6th floor temperatures,
I'm just glad someone could document it.
Oh, sure, that's a lawyer, right? Oh, wait a minute.
It was freezing yesterday. Thank you for fixing it.
We patched it, so. Any other exciting questions, Ann?
Yeah, the 31,000
31.
for your other contracts, that includes movers?
Yes. I know that we're gonna have to support in any number of ways the move for the court clerk, the move for the treasurer, those kinds of things. Some of the capital categories have those components to them, but invariably we have to support that. And so, for example, when it came time to move the public defender back to 6, we had on staff, just in case those contract movers came up shorthanded or for whatever reason didn't show up or couldn't show up, and it worked out. So.
But isn't the move of the court clerk and the assessor, that's a ARPA funded project, right? So those expenses should be accounted for in those dollars, right?
Should be.
Yeah.
Are they not?
They are.
Okay.
But when people don't show up, it's not the dollars that matter. It's trying to get people trying to have another way to accomplish what we need to get done in the time frame that we have to do this work.
Is this something that Shine could assist with?
Yes. Shine was here and helpful moving the third and fourth floors back. But again, I contracted with another moving company to be here just to be certain. Shine, I know, has other obligations and other places that they need to be.
But they could certainly get it on their schedules.
Yeah. Right.
But the more they do on that, the less contract work that they can do, which puts them in a bind financially. So, I mean,
This is
I
just
think-
recognizing the need.
I understand, but that's recognizing a need through a dollar amount, and that dollar amount should be in the ARPA account. So, I mean, I don't know. My question is on your trucks.
Mhm.
What kind of trucks are you needing?
We haul equipment. You know, we did this last year, but we've got several skid steers that we use for snow removal in the parking garages down here. When after Oklahoma City comes through, piles everything up against the curbs so that you can't load and unload traffic.
Right.
We need to have reliable ways to move that equipment. We've got trucks.
Well, we had talked to you last year about the skid steers
Mhm.
for, you know, if District 1 could help you on that.
That's right. And District 3, thank you so much, did give us another skid steer.
Right.
But our trucks, we talked about last year taking your garage sale trucks, and we're happy to do that. But again, that's the need. That's what the costs are for trucks. If we need to go a different way, I'm fine with that.
I'm just asking if you've reached out to the 3 districts or others to see if they do have some trucks that are available.
Yeah, Jeremy out of D3 told me where to go and buy new ones.
We're trying to help.
Yeah, I know.
So you have resources at your disposal.
We're fishing in lots of water.
I'm just wondering where he's gonna find 2 trucks for $60,000 if you're getting them new.
Jeremy said those will him. He said, yeah.
That would be.
Said state contract, new F-150s, you can pick them up now for about $35,000 each.
Yeah, well, that would be 70,000, but.
They went up like 12% from last year.
Do you know that for a fact?
Yeah, so 35 is probably pretty close.
Yeah.
I think they were about 28 and a half, 29, something like that last year.
Mm-hmm.
That went up a fair amount.
All right. Any other questions?
I have one back on the salary sheet,
Back on the what?
on the salary.
Okay.
So up there you got technicians, new positions, 9 months. If those were in there last year, do we need to annualize that?
Probably, yes.
Are those vacancies or I mean, you've got them as new, you've got new in there.
Yes.
So those are vacancies?
Yes.
If there were vacancies, then they should have been budgeted last
Well,
year at 100%.
They are, they were, well, it's 9 months, so I guess I don't know what the numbers are. Is the 108 a full year, or is it 9 months?
Yeah, I'm not sure why they did it that way. We typically will take our payroll, do the gazentas, find out where we need to be, having gone through 9 months of the fiscal year, and then project that. So that may very well be a miscalculation. But I know we're down that many positions. Another thing that worries me, back on the technical side of things, the people that we employ that man the swing shift, that's 4 to midnight, and in the graveyard, midnight to 7 a.m. When contractors come in, our people can't watch those contractors, their subs, what they're doing, and take care of the rounds and the inspections they have to make on the complex. So they check every door in the annex, they check every door in the ICB, and every door in the courthouse. And a good set of rounds takes about 4 hours if it's done correctly. So the time necessary to do rounds and oversee any contractor work that's going on here at night is really difficult. When contractors and subcontractors are working here at night, they know they can get away with just about everything, they'll sweep through, and then we're stuck with the problems later. That's been an MO from day one. So additional help, additional qualified help, again, I can't say enough about that. On those shifts where we need oversight is important. Stacey would come down here if we, middle of the night. Like,
Stacey, Grant took on Shine. I mean,
I think we've got a janitorial budget on here too.
Yeah.
And I think the adjustment made covers additional square footage. I'm not sure. I remember some of the conversations that we had. I'm not exactly sure.
yeah,
what
wasn't
that-
this because we had increased over an ICB when the public defender D1 and D3 had to move over there, but they weren't having to clean the sixth floor.
That's right.
But now that we're all back up on the sixth floor, they
Yes.
gotta clean it. Plus, they're gonna still be doing ICB because of the entities that are in those spaces.
Well, or we resumed cleaning on the sixth floor and we did before.
Mhm.
Supplies, I think have leveled off. Last year, we calculated a 20% increase or so in the cost of paper goods, cleaning products, and so on. But I think that's tapered off. Or we simply over budgeted last year, not knowing what to expect really. I remember looking at that. I think we're good there.
Okay. Capital?
So look here. There may not
If
have
you got
been
them in order,
no.
you're at the bottom.
Yeah.
It's 500,000. You got 50,000 in courthouse carpet, 50,000 annex carpet, 100,000 for insurance deductible and depreciation, and then 300,000 for the unallocated capital.
Right, that's a standard thing. And we've called at various times on that $300,000 fund, unallocated capital for needs that seem to pop up. That's been handy. The $50,000 in the courthouse, $50,000 in the annex, we've done traditionally. The estimates for insurance are always up in the air. And if you remember 2 years ago, maybe 3 now, our deductible was at $50,000. Since we'd had some issues, it was increased to $100,000. But as frequently as it seemed annually, when we call on our insurance carrier to bail us out a little bit, in times past, we hadn't recognized the need to set that deductible aside, and that's why it's there.
Fire protection.
Yeah, we could put that there. We could put the stairwell there. Yeah.
That's what I was anticipating.
We got a fire protection issue that in the courthouse 11-4 that needs to be on this budget for 500,000.
Can you add it to that, amend this, add that, send it to Micah, and then maybe we could receive the updated estimate of need on Tuesday?
Are there any other capital needs that are falling between the cracks between this and ARPA?
Can you guys just get your heads together between now and tomorrow and figure that out and get with Micah, get whatever necessary changes need to be on there. That way she can post that by Monday at before 1.
Before 1.
Preferably Friday.
Well, considering I.
Well, that's why I told them tomorrow. That way
Maybe we'll do this with a piece of paper and pen together.
I know you're good at that, so that's all right.
Thanks, Stacey. Are there any questions for Keith? If not, do we have a motion to receive?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you
All opposed?
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. So is it in the jail? Is that the last one?
I've left her a message and I've called her and sent her a message, just telling her we're ready whenever she can get here.
Well, I mean, if they're
they're
scheduled for
anticipating
11 and you have not heard from them, then I say
That's
we
very
recess
possible.
until 11 o'clock.
Okay.
I mean, there's no sense in us sitting around here.
I didn't finish my hallway. We didn't have
It's
it,
not
so we
on
weren't able
here.
to address it. Oh, I thought
It
it was,
wasn't
no,
attached.
yeah, it was on for today.
Yeah.
Is it attached to this
It
one?
was on for today's agenda.
Yeah, okay.
All right, well, let's knock that.
I just did not touch it. Very good. It's worth knocking something else out. And I think it should be easy. Hopefully. Hold on.
Why did we say that? Sorry, I'm having some.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, you just send me that to them, and then you can get updated one or two something. Or just receive the update. Bless you.
I can just start
No, it's all right. I got it.
talking.
Sorry.
As was mentioned yesterday, for this, and you all will know this history better than I, but there was a sort of a redistricting, and then that evolved into a VOCC vote to reallocate these funds based on road miles. And so District 3 has, I think, 43% of the total road miles in the county. And so that's going to be the most significant change that you'll see here. And then right there, where she's pointing to, I wanted to point out, I think it's my understanding in the past that District 3 has not done this, but we are putting part of our salaries that would have been in general fund over into highway, 10% of each of those. We have taken on 2 new employees sort of as a result of this. They are also very excited in Tim's program with the Esri stuff. They've had several good meetings, are hoping to jump into and I can get into the weeds of it, but kind of leading the way in utilizing that at the yard. And so hopefully that'll tell us what that success looks like and whatever the next step should be. But that's kind of where we are with that.
I think you mentioned sign collection data, stuff like that.
Exactly right. And we have taken on new sign duties with this switch as well. So the timing of that is really good, I think. Or that's our hope. And I think that's about it for us for Highway Fund.
Yeah, so hopefully with the Esri project and then the Tin Horn project, that ARPA project that Stacey's got going, we can get tin horns and cross drains and all of our signs and everything into that Esri system so that we can all manage and track.
Right, and
That'll be
CL,
really
the same
nice.
thing at the same time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it'd be great. So that's kind of their focus right now.
I mentioned the 10 horns to Tim yesterday.
Mhm. Tim's gonna handle the Tim Horns. Sorry.
He's doing his best.
He's very excited.
He is very excited.
Yeah.
You sound like my daughter. She does that every time I do a dab joke.
How old is she?
21.
Oh,
So she has a lot of experience with it.
She does.
Mhm.
She's fed up with them. All right, is there a motion to receive?
So moved.
We got a motion? Second. We got a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, do we have a motion to recess until 11 o'clock? Hang on. Have you heard back?
I have not.
Okay, is there a motion to recess until 11?
What if she comes back sooner? Are we able to?
She
No,
can do a
we've got to
message.
recess until a time and
Sure.
date specific.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to recess until 11 o'clock. All those in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
We all can hear back.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I need
that's
to,
right.
I want to start taking some lessons.
We can do some probably words.
Oh, you
between
need to let
DFCC and
We need to do excise.
doing great.
On the audit real
Yeah,
quick.
I figured that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I will
Nina was gonna
go
do that.
before
Yeah, I noticed that, but I was thinking, I know what they are, and I wouldn't worry about it.
not too much change.
Well, they're easy.
Hungry.
Angry.
I have to have snacks on break.
Yeah. I eat lunch a lot at a time. It has been different. I'm off my schedule this week.
I think there are 1 minute left.
1 minute left.
The
Oh, it's
chairman
no wonder
of
I
the
feel hungry.
committee should order pizza.
You should bring
Order out.
snacks. Donuts in the morning.
When we used to do these all day, there was a time, I think it was, and then before you, we had a snack bar that made the best brownies. And so we ordered cans of brownies for our afternoon.
Yes.
When we used to meet, we were way up on the 6th floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sugar will get me
Sorry.
through.
We still need to do this too.
Sure.
Excise and.
Do that first.
Yeah. I mean,
If we can, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. The gleeful candy, the gleeful farmer, the Jolly Rancher, the gleeful farmer.
It takes me a while. Is that another one of the dad jokes?
Call your daughter.
That's
Have her
right.
calm you down.
I should write that one down now, right?
She'll talk you off the cliff. Don't go there.
Farmers and ranchers, I don't know if I can see the parallel, but you do so.
I know.
So,
My grandpa's rolling over in his grave.
yeah.
So there's a rancher, not a farmer.
Yeah.
All right, it is 11 o'clock. Do we have a motion to return to open session?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. We've got excise board and BOE, I think that we need to do real quick, and then we will move on to jail trust.
Yeah.
Of course. I would never say it if I didn't.
That's why you walk around sometimes, right?
Like
You
what?
said that, not me.
So for
It's
BOE
a cheat.
excise, not much of an increase, $1,800 in salaries.
all the time, and I don't like it.
We did have a state bill that passed to increase pay rates from 75 to 125. That went into effect January 3rd, 2023. So not much of an increase in salaries. And I do have a little bit of an increase in mileage since mileage rates did go up in 23. So overall, about a $2,500 increase in BOE excise to cover the state bill. And then county audit, 190 is flat. So no changes.
Any discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion to receive?
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great job, Nina. All right. We are down to item number 27. Discussion possible action regarding FY 23-24 estimate needs for criminal justice authority. Brandy, I don't know who you're gonna have present, but the floor is you guys.
Steve's gonna get up, but I'm gonna be up there to kind of help provide some supporting information.
Okay, sounds good.
Morning.
Good morning.
Alright.
Do you mind making that just a little bit bigger, please?
Do you wanna start here?
He likes 150%.
Well, I saw C was needing some help too.
Well, I did have a new contact, so it's better than last year. I couldn't see it last year, so. Okay, we're gonna start with salaries and benefits. So this is what we're gonna start with. And for next year's budget, we are proposing for an increase of 4.651 in salaries and wages and 1.942 in fringe benefits. And I do have a breakdown for that. And one of them is for COLA for 8.5% for all the current employees, 320 that we have budgeted for. And the other one is for additional 89 full-time employees. Let's get a
Motion to see receipt document.
Second. We got a motion and second to receive the document. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. Motion to receive the second document. Do we have one?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
So the 8.5% for your existing 320 positions, and then you're asking for 89 additional positions.
That's correct.
Okay, my question on the salary sheet, before we, talk about any increases about dollar amount, over on the number of budgeted positions, when the trust first took over the operations of the Oklahoma County Jail, the county gave the trust roughly, it was a little bit more, but the same budget that the sheriff's department had. And if anybody at the table has a different recollection of anything that I say, please speak up and correct me.
It was 2 million more.
It was 2 million more than what the sheriff had. Some of that was because of expenses that the trust was gonna have that the sheriff didn't have, like workers' comp insurance and some different things. And we had said then that the sheriff was budgeted for 400 employees is what they had to use the money that the county had been giving them. So when we started this endeavor in July 1, 2020, that far left column, the total full-time positions was 400. Last year, it was presented to us that since you weren't able to retain 400 employees and you wanted to give raises to the employees that you had, that you wanted to lower your FTE number from 400 to 330. Is that everybody's recollection?
Mm-hmm.
And that you would use the money for 70 positions to increase salaries that are over there, give raises. Then I've asked a couple times, and maybe I misunderstood, but since those raises were given, I don't think there's been raises given, correct?
That was the trust that gave a 10% raise.
Well, I think it was total, it was like 20-something%.
It was
over
only
a year and a half.
10% January 21, and trust gave 10% raise across the board. And when the county gave a 3% COLA in September, that's when the trust matched that again. So that happens right after.
So we've only received a total of a 13% increase.
Right.
So 10% in January of 21, and then
was when, right before the sheriff left, he gave raises to everyone.
Okay.
The sheriff gave a $3,000 raise.
Right.
And I believe that number was actually 360 from what I'm reading.
Okay.
Was what he was budgeting for.
No.
He had originally budgeted for 400, and then I guess he'd given raises and given it lowered it to 360.
Well, when we had the discussions here, because we had budgeted that later, that it was 400. I mean, that was the number that was discussed around the table with, it was Mark McCubbin at the time, that was the amount. But since the 10% raise, when you had moved it to 330 FTEs, you've not given raises, correct?
Since the 10% gave a 3%.
Well, since the 3%, that last
Right,
one.
that was the last one.
Okay,
Well, yeah, last fiscal year.
right. So my question is, now we've had another reduction in FTEs from 330 down to 320.
My number has always been 320, so I don't know.
That's not the number. Am I wrong?
I think it's just been different people that have been doing the budget.
Mhm.
I mean, Mark
But I mean-
McCubbin, it was.
But I mean, that was presented to us was that, I mean, I think there's the video that's out there that, I mean, we can show that Mr. McCubbin said that you guys were gonna take a lump sum of money that was allocated for 70 employees for the 400
Okay.
and reduce FTEs to 330, because then I asked the question, well, if we do that, because this was in August or September for the supplement in 21, my question was, well, okay, but are you gonna come back at the beginning of the next fiscal year and ask for 400 spots, ask for that increase of 70 at the higher rate? And the response was, no, that's not gonna happen. And I understand situations change, but when we got that next budget request, it was for the increase from 330 to 400. And then last year, the number, whenever we were doing the budget cycle, it was 330. That's what we were talking about.
Okay.
And I understand that money between 330 and 400 went to those pay raises. My concern now is if we've not had pay raises since then, where did the money for those 10 employees from 330 down to 320, where did that go?
That's a very good question. Keep in mind, I came over in January.
I know, I get that.
Yeah.
You're
And I
kind
wasn't
of flying a
involved.
little bit blind. I get that.
Yeah. I wasn't involved in the budget then. I did know that there was a reorganization, restructuring somewhere around maybe May, June, July, I can't remember specifically, where we were told that we needed to go through our sheet of employees and positions and get it down to the number of 320. And that's the only number that I've been aware of since I've been employed there. The other numbers that I have are just looking at the historical information that the sheriff had previously had, and the number that I had seen was 420, and then it had gone down to 360, and that's the information that I have. But moving forward, all I know is looking at the number of staff that I need, and that number is 409 people.
Right, which we were, I mean,
Aware of.
we were aware, and that's what
Sure.
we thought we were funding when we first gave the jail trust the budget. Well, maybe not 409, but 400.
Yeah.
I guess this conversation leads me to another question. And I think maybe a little bit of the confusion on our end is the county, we have to operate under a balanced budget.
Mhm.
We have to. So we estimate our expenses, we set our budget. Our budget doesn't always meet all of our wants and needs, but we have to allocate. We allocate so much into salaries, so much into benefits, so much into travel, M&O, and capital, and then we spend within those buckets. And if we need to, let's say it's the assessor's office, and they had something happen where their M&O expenses go up, then the first thing they look at is their own budget, and they'll move money from, say, salaries, whether temporarily or permanently within their budget for that year. They'll go to budget board and say, hey, this is what we want to do. We understand that you gave us X amount of money for M&O, but we have this change. We really need to take care of this change. We want to move money that you thought you gave us for salary into M&O, right? So what is that process like with you guys? When we set up, like last year, it said 330, and then it moves to 320. How were those decisions made? How were those monies that were allocated for salaries versus M&O versus capital? How does that, because it seems like it changes.
Well, that's a very good question. Steve can give you a little bit more historical information since he worked with Brian Beck on this, who was the previous CFO. And of course, I'm coming into it blind. I've tried to look into it, and that is kind of what you're describing. That is how I know county government and budgets to work. I don't know how it was done before, but moving forward, whatever funds we get, if we intend to reallocate that money, we would come before the budget board and request, or at least inform and say, this is what we're facing, this is what we want to do.
Well, no, I don't think budget board is the place where you do that. I think you go to the jail trust and you get their permission to move money within, because we're not, the county, all we're doing is we're giving you some money
Right.
to operate your organization. When we created the trust, we, all of the duties and responsibilities of the sheriff shifted to the trust, and we said we're going to try to help with those expenses at the level that we've been able to help the sheriff with through funding to you, but you're going to need to use the other resources that you currently have available, plus go out and find additional resources to make up those differences that you're going to need to make. So we're just we're part of a funding mechanism for y'all. I do think, so getting permission from us to do anything, I think is inappropriate. You need that from your board. Now, being informative to BET and budget board and letting everybody know what you're doing and why you're doing it, I think that
Maybe
is
that's a better
smart, but not coming to get permission.
Right. Maybe that's a better way of doing it. My intent behind what I just said is, I understand that when you guys tell us, you're looking at this and you're saying that you're allocating this much money for this many employees, if we make changes to that, I think that y'all need to know about it. Because otherwise we get questions like this, and unfortunately, because I am new in this position, I don't have the answers. I don't know if C has all the answers. He can probably speak to some of it.
We do the appropriation based on what revenue we receive, 2 or 3 times a month, and then we appropriate to make sure that we have enough to cover payroll, M&O, capital, and benefits. And since we receive the county check once a month, and at months we have to make adjustments. And to decide how much money needs to be appropriated to be able to cover those bills on that Monday on the trust meetings. And we do keep track of them, and we have record of showing that how much money we have spent on payroll, and based on at that time each month, and we have to make a decision on what needs to be paid, what's the priority, and what we need to pay. And that's how we decide on how much money to appropriate for each month. And that's based on what we see at that time each month. And when we have money left in payroll, it doesn't really tell us like how much money we have exactly for that month, and it depends on payroll fluctuates every month, and with the turnover and everything. So we don't know until the red payroll, and until I see the red. And at times I don't even know the numbers until a few days after the first of the month. So we have to make a projection each month on payroll, and we know exactly how much we're going to pay for M&O and capital, and it's all there. So and that's how we make our decision based on all that information.
That does not sound like a budgeted way of doing stuff, right?
What do you mean, like?
Well, so it sounds like you're appropriating based on what you're spending instead of the other way around.
Being
Yeah.
reactive.
Spending based on appropriation.
Right, but because each month on bills that comes in, we don't really know exactly, because
But you should know as you're going
Yeah.
throughout the month. So you should know, okay, we are budgeted for, let's just say, $3 million. That's way high, but say $3 million for payroll. You should know in your organization how many employees you have at any given time and what your payroll exposure is.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be higher than what that $3 million is. So when you get your appropriation that you get from the county is the same every month. If not, sometimes we increase a little bit. So
right.
You may wind up having more money in there as far as if you get the $3 million, but you only had $2.4 million of salary for that month because you were down 600,000. I'm just using, ballpark numbers. But just because you're budgeted at 3 million and you only came in at 2.4, the way we do stuff here, and I think it's what Mike is getting at, is that $600,000 that you saved there. That doesn't mean that $600,000 would be available for M&O expenses and capital expenses and travel expenses and anything else, right? That 600,000 sits in that line item bank for your employee expenditures. And then if you wind up having, a retirement payout or something like that, you've got some reserves in there, hopefully, to take care of that. And then at the end of the year, you got extra money or zero money in each of those accounts. You shouldn't have a negative. You will have a negative if you're not tracking your expenditures on a daily, weekly basis. If you're surprised at what those numbers are at the end of the month when that comes in, I wouldn't want to be in that position.
No, the appropriate, we know exactly how much we're getting from the county.
But you said you're surprised. You don't know what that payroll number is going to be until
Right.
you get it at
That's why
April.
we have an estimate on how many it's going to be when we do the appropriation.
I don't mean to word your mouth. I think probably what I'm assuming that he means, living in that world at one point, like I don't think it's uncommon, at least like for us, for example, like with our recent, employee that was forced to separate employment. He would have a large annual leave payout. And it's like that might be an example maybe of what you talk about. So I mean, in some cases, in areas where there is more turnover, I think, than others, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think my assumption of what you're saying is that, you don't always know, like tomorrow, if for some reason 20 of our SROs just walked out the door and we all owe them $20,000 in annual leave payments, which is not something that's budgeted by the county. There's no way to know that until sometimes the moment of. I mean, we have people that separate the day before, payroll without notice. Mm-hmm. So maybe, I don't know, that might be something that could contribute to that.
I don't think, but Brandon, I get that, but I don't think that's the issue.
And maybe not, but.
I mean, is that the issue? Are you having lots of?
Yeah, because we have a lot more turnovers in.
Yeah, but your turnovers on long-term employees that have 300 and 400 hours built in?
We do have, especially recently, we have quite a few people that have worked there for a while that are departing the agency.
I do know that. I do know personally several people that retired that have more service than me. Yeah. And I don't know if they provided notice. That's not for me to know. But I can see how that might be a problem, and how. To his point, I can see how it is difficult to know exactly what payroll numbers are going to be.
Well, I'm not saying that it's going to be $2,483,124.76. I'm saying that it's not going to be more than $3 million. If you're running an ongoing balance of leave for all your employees, when Mike gets notice that somebody's quitting, he probably knows right then or gets that immediately what that payout is. So he knows because we track that. So we know what our exposure is. We may not know what it was 2 days ago until we know that they're leaving, but right. We're not surprised when we get the payroll report.
The one that I know for sure, I always make sure I add that into like when the previous CEO had the settlement leave, and then we knew how much we have to pay that month. So I always make sure that I added that. Anything that I'm not sure, it fluctuates, like I said. And it's hard to predict, and we have a budget for payroll. I know what's the max. This is after the 320 if we are fully staffed. And I make sure that I allocate enough money to cover at least to a point where we know my current employees, and then I give a little bit cushion to that. That way, that's the first thing we need to make sure that we pay our employees. And then after that, what's left, look at M&O and the invoices that we have to pay, and some that we pay monthly, some we pay yearly, and at times every month we have to wait on our revenues, and sometimes they don't come the day where they're supposed to come, and it messes up. And just like the IRS overpayment, it threw everything off just for one little mistake that someone did. And these are things that we deal with daily and have to watch. And I have a sheet that track my daily happens. And how much money is appropriated, I track everything. And to make sure that we have enough cover payroll and benefits, then I look at M&O. And there's some invoices vendors were able to work with us. They gave us a longer terms. And that allowed us to tell them, hey, we're gonna pay 4 weeks this month. I submit. And then we have to do a catch up because some bills need to pay first. And the emergency that happen all the time, and elevator that has problem, we have to pay those. And it comes in daily, and you don't know what to expect.
Does 100% of your payroll costs, do they come out of what's appropriated to you by the county's general fund? And the reason I'm just from historical, like, so when we came in for a budget, when we were running the jail, we would have a certain amount that was paid out of general fund, a certain amount out of special revenue, and a certain amount out of service fee, depending on their assignment. So is 100% of your staff now through what the county has given you on line item, 51010, for example?
We do not have them split up at the sheriff's office. Like we have 1160, 1161, and
it's combined.
Right, it's combined, and so that's why. And like I said, the way how and we have to move money around each month to be able to pay what we need to pay first. And so that's why we have to be flexible to deal with what we have to deal with. And at the end, and everything is coded, it pays, and it goes to payroll, and at the end, we know exactly how much we spend on payroll after it's paid.
Well, but on payroll, if you look at what you say you were budgeted this year, which was the 14-something million dollars, 14,673,583, you've only had 1 month that really got close to your if you divide that by 12, yeah, if you divide it by 12, all your months you're under that.
Right, we've been below 320, as everyone knows, we are never fully staffed
right.
the entire year.
Which is my point, that what Brandon was bringing up, I understand that can be an issue, but that's not been an issue for you guys because you've been at an employee level. Because you say that you're budgeted for 320, I still think that it was, should say 330 or 400, but let's take that off the table. Even at the 320, I know at all of the trust meetings, when you guys do your financial report, and then when you give your report, and when Mr. Williams would give his, those employee numbers have always been under 320 and significantly under 320. So your salary numbers every month are actually below what that 12-month average would be, with the exception of 1 month. It was right there, but the rest of them, it is under that.
So it sounds to me, and of course I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, that savings that you're talking about, if you're not fully staffed at 320, then you should have, some cush left over in salaries. You're allocating that somewhere else to pay monthly bills that might have been higher than what they were, or bills that you didn't foresee happening that are coming up. You're using that overage in salaries in your M&O, more or less. Is that right?
And that was going to piggyback.
That is correct.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is dangerous, because then you get next month where you do have a big payout, or 2 months later you have several big payouts. You've been taking the savings that you get from not having the 320 employees, and you're paying for other things. So then you're going to potentially be at a deficiency at the end of the year. So let's just say 6 months out of the year, you only have 300 employees, and all of that savings that you've saved, you've spent it on other stuff. And then all of a sudden you have a couple of really good cadet classes, and you get people come in. Now you're fully staffed at maybe you actually have 330. You're a little bit over. You won't have any savings to go in there and take care of that.
Right, but we're not spending what's not spent yet. We're spending what that we didn't spend. So it's not going to affect the next.
But yes, it will.
No.
You just said that Brandon was right, that you don't know what your payouts are gonna be. Your payouts are gonna be potentially unknowns that are gonna be on top of your budgeted amount, the $14.6 million, right? If you are coming in and every month you're saying, okay, we budgeted $2 million, we only had 1.4 million of spend, so now we got $600,000 to spend over here, then every month you're starting over basically with a zero balance in your salary account, and then you're just gonna appropriate that same amount the next month. So then you appropriate the $2 million the next month, but you have a bunch of payouts, and so it's $2.3 million is what your liability is that next month. You could have, if you didn't spend that $600,000 on other stuff the previous month, you would have started that next month, you'd have had a $600,000 balance in there to cover anything over that $2 million.
So to your point, I get where you're going with that, and I completely agree. I understand where you're going with that. But there are certain items that come up that we cannot foresee, that we are not budgeted for, that need to be taken care of in a very emergent manner. A muffin monster goes down, we just spent, $30,000 that we didn't have. So I see what he's saying as well. We always have something come up. We're in a failing facility. The maintenance on that behemoth is astronomical, and it will continue to be that way.
And I get all of that, and I understand, but that's the difference between a balanced budget that we have to stay in it, and then, if you got the muffin monster that goes down, then maybe there's another M&O expense that you got budgeted in M&O that you really need to do, but it's not quite as important as the muffin monster, so you just shift the allocation within M&O. I'm just saying that's how, whenever we're dealing with a balanced budget, that's kind of what we have to do.
Dawn the Muffin Monster.
It's a
giant contraption. It's a giant contraption that's outside of the ground that basically keeps the bed sheets from going into the city, the city sewer system.
Yeah.
Just so you know, she's over there like, yeah, Muffin Monster.
You're gonna give it me later on that, right?
You can even go clean it up this afternoon if you want.
Cody, I do agree. I totally agree. And part of us asking for more is the fact that we are having to borrow from that fund in order to pay for the things that we need to pay for.
Mm-hmm. Because if you're keeping that savings in salaries and you have a muffin monster go down, then it runs into a situation where they're not going to be able to pay their monthly invoices.
Right. But then it gets to potentially the next month where they can't pay their salaries, and then if they have another thing in M&O, then you wind up being short. Like, I think we've heard that you're going to be $1.6 million short this year. Is that the number that we've heard?
It's projected, but it's looking up.
So that's kind of my concern.
So it's you have a problem either way.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what's the answer?
Well, the answer is, what we all do is we keep it in our budget, and we just make tough choices. I understand that is extremely difficult, and it's maybe even more so for you guys. I get that.
1,500 lives. I can't make tough choices.
I get that. But the county, all we are is a funding mechanism, a partial funding mechanism. So we only have so much. So the solution is there's got to be more money available for you guys. The problem is that the county, we've maxed every time. So when the trust was created, part of that was because it was going to be cheaper, but we understand that maybe wasn't going to be the case, because you guys are doing what you can, and it's more. So there's got to be some other revenue in there, and that was part of the reason why we created that trust, was to go out and find other revenue streams so that you have those other additional resources to be able to basically fill that hole, fill the gap.
Okay, so let's talk about that. All of our contracts, I'm going to put out for bid, and I'm going to try to get the absolute best value with the highest commissions possible. Number one. Also, I don't have the ability to call for a county tax. The commissioners do. So I don't know how else I'm supposed to generate revenue. I'm not gonna piggyback off the backs of somebody, the most poor people in our county.
But the trust could tell you, hey, we think that this would be a good idea, and we're gonna, they've made recommendations to the budget board and BOCC before for things that they would like BOCC or budget board to do. So they could make a recommendation to BOCC to put out to the vote of the people a sales tax, since that's what you brought up. I mean, if you think that's a viable funding source that could help you, or if the trust, more importantly, if the trust feels like that is a viable revenue source that would help you. By the way, we're like the only county in the state that does not have one to help.
That was the next thing I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Every other county has it that supports public safety. We don't have that.
Then I think if you had the jail trust that recognizes the financial need, if they come and ask the county, I think, I can't speak for the commissioners, and I'm not speaking for mine now. I will say, I think you would have open ears for that dialogue.
In the meantime, how do I make more money? I have him going to grant writing classes. I understand that we do have a grant writer here that has offered some services that we're going to explore, and I'm absolutely going to pursue that. I am cutting costs where I can, and it comes down to those tough choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it has anything to do with life, safety, or health issues, I'm not going to make that choice. We arguably have the highest liability of this county. And unless we want to be hit as a county with an $84 million lawsuit like Tulsa just got hit with, we have to adequately fund this jail. I'm not asking for anything exorbitant. I'm asking for us to have fair pay. We didn't get a COLA increase. We are the lowest paid employees of the county. We start out at the lowest. And we have the biggest liability and the biggest responsibility. And I'm just trying to do the right thing, and then trying to get people there that want to be there, increasing our professionalism and improving our culture. I'm trying to do the absolute best thing that I can. And unfortunately, in this situation, money is what's going to fix it.
Yeah. And I get everything that you're saying. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know how to run that facility better than you. I know what should be spent on what. That's not my point at all. I'm never going to argue with what you think you need. I mean, you're the expert there, right? You and your finance team. And I think that's kind of the mindset around the table here. We've got to understand what the numbers are and where everything is being spent and all that. But at the end of the day, we have the entire county budget that we've got to look at and support. And so just because, Mike, in the past has had some things that would really benefit the county, and we understood it and they really wanted it, we just didn't have the money to do it. And then, they would go and find money in their special revenues or whatever to be able to try to fund that. And if they couldn't, then they didn't do it for a year or 2 years and then come back, and then maybe we have the money. Everybody sitting around this table has had either their specific department, or as the commissioner's offices, we've got departments that need more money for vital services that are being provided to the county that we can't fund either, because we're the largest portion of our revenue comes from property taxes, the ad valorem. Mike can speak to this, but we're capped at a certain percent. And when you got homestead exemptions and everything, a lot of them are 3%. But some are 5%. So when we're looking at, here's what everybody's budget is, and then when we're looking at trying to increase budgets to do either new things or supplement current things, we have to either do one of two things. We have to drastically slash other programs and services, or we have to use new revenue to fund that. Well, when our revenue is capped at basically what CPI is most years, there's really no room for growth, because our programs that we're already doing, they soak up that minimal increase in ad valorem dollars just in the cost of goods going up and cost of services going up. So there's really not a whole lot of room for growth. There is a little bit in some areas sometimes, but there's just not a whole lot of room to grow and get more money into different programs. And the sheriff's office experienced this when they were running the jail, and we had to have these conversations. And that's why when we looked at creating the jail trust so that they could go out and try to find and garner support for other revenue sources, you know, the thought inside the county is the trust can do this, and then that can fill in whatever that gap is, whether it's 8 million, 15 million, 20 million, whatever that gap is, those additional revenues would fill that gap so that the county could still operate fiscally the way we have, and the jail would be able to have the resources that they need to operate at their optimal level.
I think first and foremost, everybody at this table agrees you need more money.
Mm-hmm.
I think first and foremost,
Right.
that's the important part. The unfortunate part is we don't have a tax base in place to provide the funding that you need. In my discussions with Tulsa County in regards to the operations of their county, their sales tax generates about, there's two sales tax, one for support of the jail, one for mental health.
Mhm.
Those two generate in excess of 36 million annually for the operation of the jail. That in itself is more than what you've received from us in any given year.
We are
So,
woefully
yeah,
underfunded,
yeah, and I agree with
and
you.
it's gonna be to our own detriment at some point.
I don't disagree with you. The problem we have is I don't think we have enough property to tax to generate the revenue sources that you need. And,
I understand
and that's
that.
why we want to fight for you to get everything that you need, because we know that you need that. And
Yeah, we're supportive of that. It's just a matter of do we have it to be able to move forward, or can we help facilitate conversations to try to find that? Because we want you to have all of the money that you possibly can.
And I understand that. I mean, everybody in this room has probably seen the grand jury report, and their recommendations are no more different than what I'm asking for right now. And yes, it is my problem, but I think it's overall, it's our problem that we need to solve. And I don't have all the solutions. I don't. And it is gonna take everybody in this room to figure it out.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And in general, and I'm new, so don't throw anything at me if this is out of base. But I feel like it is something that we at least need to discuss or address, especially since we're on the jail. I'm a very forward-thinking person, and so since we're having discussions about building a new jail, and I know the jail trust has come to me multiple times, different members, and CJAC, since Tim's here, in regards to where we're gonna come up with the deficit in building the jail, which they're estimating right now 60 million. And so in conversations, since I'm new to BET and this, and they're looking at us to tighten up our budgets in regards to make up for that deficit, where does that come into kind of long-term strategy in regards to the budget evaluation team? Since the community is looking at us in order to make up for that. Am I correct? I mean, Joe, I feel like that's what I hear
I'm shocked to
from.
hear, I mean, the number I've been operating off of is around 320. I think 40 million ARPA possibly, so that's 300. There was 10 million set aside, I think, already, so that's 310. And I think the commissioners have taken some action to do some other things that would be at 328. So if you're talking 360, I'm unaware of that.
So, Tim?
I've not heard 360, so I don't know where you're getting, where I've heard other people mention 360, but I have not heard that yet. And we haven't had the conversations with the architect and the construction manager, so I think it's whoever's throwing out 360. We don't have numbers.
Not only are we the only county that doesn't have a sales tax to help with this, we have how many new TIFs constantly going on that limits the future growth of our ad valorem tax rates.
Well, but Cody, I guess to Jessica's question, I would say what you all have discussed already suggests that maybe there's some differences in how payroll's being determined and run month to month versus how M&O is being run month to month. And I guess maybe that's the question is, what are the cause of those M&O things that come up each month?
Yeah, well, what I've mentioned a couple times in here and then also in other, meetings, I know in policy and governance and some others, is what I think we should try to do, and this is gonna, I would rely on Christy and Micah for this, but instead of at the beginning of the fiscal year, giving the jail trust 1/12 of the budget that they're gonna get from the county for the entire year, and then every month getting another 12, another 12, another 12, another 12, which puts you in the position of not having a whole lot of flexibility month to month. Now, by the time we get to this point in the year, when you save,
right?
well, or it may have worked its way out because you've saved money. Some months you had, more expenses than others. You may be able to work yourself out of some issues when you get further on in the fiscal year, but especially at the beginning of the fiscal year when you have unknowns, that makes it really difficult when you just got a 12. So if there's any way at the beginning of the year, we don't change the allocation, but we change the manner in which we allocate and maybe look at 2 months or 3 months of their funding at the very beginning of the fiscal year. And I know we're limited because of the actual cash that we have on hand to do it. So that's a consideration we have to have. But I think as it relates to some of your cash flow issues, we may be able to take care of some of that by allocating more than 1 month to start the fiscal year. Now that would mean at some point during the fiscal year, whether it's bookended at the end or sometime in the middle, you wouldn't get those 2 or 3 months worth, because you got it all up front, but it gives you a little bit of flexibility in those beginning months so that you don't get off to a rocky start.
Because really what they're needing is a reserve account, similar to what the county has as a reserve for those types of situations.
But see, that's exactly, I get that, but what they've done, and Brandy wasn't here then, I think that first year it was over $1.6 million, right? Like their reserve, their carryover.
Yeah.
It was a huge carryover, and then it was like $500,000 worth of carryover. So instead of just adding that into your budget for that next year, say all the rest of us have to turn that money back to the county and we reallocate it. You guys don't, so if you don't, then I would consider exactly what Mike said, is holding that as reserve money to take care of issues and not budgeting and counting on that. You put it in there and you hope that you don't have to spend any of it that month or that year, and then the next year you're just adding to it.
We call it seed corn.
Yeah.
Well, and then that way you have a monthly estimate of what your expenditures are for M&O and salaries, and then when you do have an unforeseen expense come up, then you can determine with the trust and whoever else that, okay, now we need to dip into the seed corn over here, and pay for these unforeseen type of expenses.
We're facing the same business as on our reserves right now.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to trying to fund employee benefits.
Right.
We're trying to bite chunks of that off, but it still operates.
Joe, did you have something?
Well, I don't normally set, but I am a part of this committee, so I have some questions.
See, yes, questions?
See.
Okay, so as I'm listening to this discussion about the 400 employees, the 320, the 380, whatever that number might be, right? What I'm curious is, can you go back and give us what your historical employment number is actually versus whatever you think that threshold is, right? Because it's rarity that anyone is ever at full employment throughout an FY. So can you give us that number? I think that gives us a more realistic look at maybe what that salary budget potentially could be, right?
We can get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Secondly, this $1.6 million deficit. I think, C, you said the $600,000 overpayment to the IRS created an issue. I believe that was addressed because we gave you, was it 2
No, we-
months?
Right, it was just
Okay.
an example of what happened,
Well,
things
but,
like that
but
happen.
to state in a public meeting that created an issue for you, that was an inaccurate statement. Okay? Secondly, additionally on this projected deficit, $1.6 million. Are you taking into consideration the fact in that deficit projection that you're going to be getting approximately $1.1 million in ARPA reimbursement?
That's part of,
Yeah,
that's part of it.
if we get the ARPA money, so it will reduce at 1.6 million.
So that has already been approved, correct?
Correct, but we haven't received.
You haven't received it,
Right.
But you also haven't
Okay.
received all of the money from the county that you budgeted for this year. You've been approved and you'll get it, but your ARPA money's kind of in that same boat. It's approved, you just haven't received it yet.
And we don't know, I don't wanna count on it getting here before the end of the fiscal year
It's
because it's
Monday.
been
It's Monday.
all of it.
The ARPA.
So I
Okay,
didn't
now-
understand
now-
that answer. The 1.6 is net of, or it's in addition to the 1.1?
It's on
No,
Monday,
you
as far as
reduce
I
it by
know, was
1.1.
300.
Once we receive the $1.1 million in ARPA reimbursements, then we'll be about $500,000. Which, I'll be honest, I'm in negotiations with Oklahoma City and I'm cautiously optimistic.
Thank you, that was going to be my next question. I think since the trust has been in, and these numbers won't be 100% accurate, but since the trust has been in place, they have cut that contract with the city approximately 75%.
Yeah.
Okay, so given that the trust took that action, all of those things that I've mentioned, it's highly likely that it'll be a slim budget savings at the end of the year. You'll be able to carry some money forward if all those things come true.
Right, with ARPA and the city, and we
So
we have
this-
some carryover, yeah.
A little bit.
I guess my issue is the sky is falling approach of, we're $1.6 million short. That's the worst case scenario that everyone in this room knows that 1.1 is coming. Both the trust and the county have entered into that. The trust itself cut the budget with Oklahoma City by 75%. So I think, you know, part of the issue, at least for me, as I listen to these discussions from afar, is being able to count on the accuracy of the numbers and the statements being made.
Sure.
So, but I think if you get that historical number of employment rate, that it might give this group a more realistic idea of what is really likely in terms of employment.
I can do that.
And I think that would be a good
It
place
doesn't
to
take into account the initiatives that we're taking now to improve that employment number though, so just.
Well,
keep
right,
in
but that
mind.
given said, even those initiatives, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be at 100% employment
Absolutely,
throughout a given FY.
I agree.
Thank you.
Michael. So on Monday, are we getting the whole 1.1 million?
Whatever was approved and verified by Accenture, so it's all those little ones.
The last communication I had was only for 300 and something thousand.
Whatever the reimbursements
Right, and
that were
that's what.
approved by Accenture.
Uh-huh.
But I would reach out to Accenture and see if they have verified everything.
Yeah, and the last time I heard from them, they're still reviewing all the invoices that we have submitted to them.
But that's not
I'll
on
ask them
us.
right now. What we
Yeah,
can
we
expect.
need to, that shouldn't be that hard to know. You should know
I
that.
had to redo the invoices 3 times already, change the date.
And that's why I
because of the-
said, we don't wanna count on that money making it here before the end of our fiscal year because
Good
they
point.
keep moving and changing the things that they're requiring of us and using documents and I can't tell you how many times it's gone to this board and oh wait, no, it's gotta go to this board. Okay, now it's gotta go back to this board and it's just, it's a very complicated process. For us it is anyway.
Well, it shouldn't be. And I'm sorry that it has been that difficult, and we need to get that fixed in the future because that's ridiculous. And Joe and I had that conversation yesterday afternoon about this because we met with Chantel to see if you guys were being taken care of, and we reiterated to her that, I mean, it's not her, it's Accenture.
Sure.
And so we're gonna have a conversation with them as well. I would encourage
So to my
Absolutely.
knowledge,
you
we
guys
are
as well,
expecting,
but it's ridiculous.
to my knowledge, we're only expecting like the 368,000 right now.
Yeah.
Which is still good, it's just not what we've already spent.
Significantly different than the 1.1 we were talking about.
Somewhere in the last couple of years, the trust has also received almost 15 million from CARES, and those were reimbursements as well.
But one thing that I want to be clear of, though, is make sure that we're all on the same page. This $1.1 million, it's not, when you're talking about your $1.6 million short this year, without that 1.1 reimbursement is for stuff that was paid the previous fiscal year. It's not for stuff that was paid for in this fiscal year, right?
Not all of
Not all of it.
Most of it, right?
I don't know the
I don't
exact
wanna put a number to
Yeah.
it, Cody.
Do you remember that?
No.
Joe, do you recall?
I don't recall, but
My recollection was that most all of that was from that previous fiscal year. So, and even if it was part, some of those expenses are being reimbursed from the previous fiscal year. So if we're assuming, $1.1 million is being replaced, we're $1.6 million short, but $1.1 million of that was COVID related, and we're getting a COVID related reimbursement, and those kind of expenses won't happen in the future. Well, your 1.6 this year is not, it's not because of COVID related
I
stuff.
don't remember exactly, but I do have the date when we pull up all the invoices and we were told certain dates that we pull that's only eligible for ARPA. We did go through all the process. I remember that.
Here's what I remember. When we had those conversations in policy and governance, my stance was I felt like all of those reimbursement pieces were paid for by and large with county general fund dollars that we sent over to you. You use that in the previous fiscal year for those items, that the reimbursement, because it was in that previous fiscal year, should come back to the county, and then we would be able to allocate that to you guys for ARPA related expenses that you incurred during this fiscal year. I was outvoted on that, and we did the reimbursement directly to you guys, and I get that, and that's fine. I just thought from an accounting standpoint, it would have been cleaner like that. That's where my recollection is coming from, that most of those reimbursement pieces, not new projects, because the new projects, you applied for new projects, whether it was the network upgrades or the roof and all of that, those things that hadn't been done yet before this fiscal year started, you would applied for those through the portal, but then you would apply for reimbursements for expenses from the previous fiscal year.
Can I check on that and get back to you and then
Yeah. So all my point is that your expenditures this year going up 1.6, unless there's changes made, you'll be in the same boat next year, because those weren't because of COVID. We were reimbursing from expenses that were the previous year.
Right.
So,
see, on the estimates I need for, and this is kind of to Joe's point, it appears on the revenues page you're taking into account the $1.1 million from ARPA. So if all of those things were to come in appropriately, do you actually anticipate carrying forward to 80,000?
Yes.
Okay. So if everything were to work like it's supposed to,
and there are things that it's projecting, like the
salaries,
vicinity,
right?
Everything, and I see some good sign that when I see a bill that's $50,000 less a month, and that I can breathe that day, and not knowing what to come up, and we just paid for the month and more, so we just paid $37,000 to fix that. And then I had to pay for the elevator for $25,000 when we were here in December to ask for. And then I was able to use money that was not spent to pay for that, because that was for the elevator for the secure area that it needs to be fixed. And I had to pay those bills.
well, and down there close to where Brandon's talking about, on your budget request, when we're tracking here, you got at the very bottom that your budget request is 42,470, right? And then you've got next to it that FY 22-23.
That's the last one, the last meeting that we were here, and when we had to fix, I don't know how many times we had to fix our budget last year. Every time we came back, we went back and fixed, and that's the last number I had, the final number.
But here, and it's just, it goes back to what Joe said a second ago, to make sure that we're using the proper nomenclature and everybody's on the same page. That line item says budget request.
That's what we requested.
You didn't request $34 million for this year. You requested $44 million for this year.
Right, and when we went back and adjusted everything, and then we came back a few times, and it's all there. I mean, I have all the information, and we adjusted to lower what we asked for.
The original
and we fixed payroll, which at the beginning we had it for 400. Like the one you mentioned earlier, and then we adjusted all that. And we went across and double checking every line item and see what we can do to cut costs. And then that was the last one I had.
So when you say budget request for this year, that it's your first budget request that you're doing, but the 34 million for last year is a different budget request than what you made initially.
Yeah, that's what eventually dwindled down in
Yeah,
September.
yeah, and that's what was confusing me, because usually what we do is if we're talking about your budget request, it's what you make this time of the year, not in September.
Okay, okay, thanks a lot.
Y'all have a list of priorities, like, I think it's probably, I'm just one person with a vote, but I think it's probably obvious that the county doesn't have enough money to, and I don't know if Mike has that sheet yet, but at some point we'll have a sheet. Every office and every division we're funded at what their request is versus the number that actually comes in. It'll be something stupid lopsided, like $30 million more than what the county is actually gonna bring in. And so, do y'all have a priority? I mean, for example, if there's no way that the county can provide you 42,470 or whatever the number is, do y'all have a priority of things, what you'd rather have over another? I mean, kind of back to that hard decisions question.
There are, if we were to remain budgeted at 320, I am still requesting the 8.5% increase.
Well, and I was gonna ask that too, as far as adding 89 new positions and then doing the 8.5 with your current positions.
Right.
Would you rather do one versus the other, or kind of blend it together and do a little of this, a little of that?
Well, let me ask you this, is it possible to do 320 at 8.5%? If we get to that 320, because right now we're at like 294, could we come back and say, hey, we need 10 additional positions on that? Can we do it incrementally rather than just one big, hey, I need 89 positions and I want 8.5% increase for all of those positions?
Well, let me get back to the conversation we had a minute ago. We operate off of a balanced budget. So we're gonna budget stuff now,
Okay.
and then we put money in reserve. But as we're all aware now, our employee benefits, we're gonna put at least $2.3 million from our reserve this year. And that's not just for us, that's for your employees as well, because your employees are the largest subset that are on that
They
plan.
also rotate a lot, so they're paying in, but they're not getting paid out.
We're talking about medical insurance.
Okay.
Yeah. So I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
She was asking about coming in an incremental way, and you were kind of giving that.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
stuck
so
with sort of
I just don't know that we would have that. But I think, and I'll just be honest with you, this was the issue that I had last year and the year before, is that we recognized when the sheriff had it that they had more needs than we had money, right? We were trying to fix that by creating a trust to do two things, hopefully save money and to also find other revenue streams to be able to meet the need. What we've seen since then is no discussion about revenue streams, increases in costs, and every single one of those increases in costs have been county, or others, city, we're gonna lower your contract by 70% or whatever. I mean, we don't even have one right now. But going from like $1.2 million down to 500, down to 450, down to, we've heard $200,000. So not only are we not having discussions about other revenue streams or saving money, which, and I'm not saying that you can save money, I'm not saying that at all, but we're not doing those. And then we're adding these extra costs, which we've all said, we understand there's more, but we're cutting stuff with the city, for instance, that, what is it, their sales tax came in at last quarter, was it $15 million higher than projected? Not $15 million, but $15 million higher than projected.
Right.
And here we are struggling, and there's no conversations with anybody else except, well, let's just let them use the jail for free and hopefully get a contract.
Well,
and I understand you're working on a contract.
Just because you're not hearing the conversations doesn't mean they're not taking place.
Okay,
And
I get that. That was unfair. What I said, I didn't mean it the way it came out. I know, I didn't mean it the way that came out. But even at that, if those conversations are at $450,000, $500,000, that's still $600,000-$700,000 less than it was just a few years ago.
Well, I'm not gonna go into the numbers right now because we are in negotiations and this is an open meeting. But I will say, moving forward, I'm not interested in cutting costs and I'm not interested in cutting our revenue that way. I think that when people have the means to pay, they need to pay. Because this is, yeah, it's a county jail, but these are members of the community that are also, you know, they live in the city. And if we're gonna be taking care of them and they want us to do a better job, as everybody in the news and everybody in the community has asked us to do, we're gonna have the money to do that.
Do you know what percentage of the population that you have is booked in from the city of Oklahoma City?
It's about 70%. 75.
75%.
Not 9.
Yeah.
I just want y'all to understand, moving
But 75%
forward, I'm not
is really
interested in making deals like that. I'm not. I'm looking for ways to cut costs and to get the absolute top dollar for our contracts. And
we appreciate that.
we have cut costs, and some of the budget requests that you may see, like there's a little increase, but it's to buy technology, so eventually we can reduce the cost of what we're doing currently. We're operating in like 1990s right now. We have paper logbooks. I don't know any jail in the world right now that uses paper logbooks.
I know one.
They're
expensive. Yeah. Hey,
we have a plan in place that's pretty cost effective. We just have to get the technology to do it, and it's not an expensive thing. Our workers' comp, because we have tried to do our very best with informing our staff of safety and reducing the uses of force and trying to change our culture, we were able to reduce that by $120,000 this
Just
year.
came in this morning.
So we're looking, we're doing the best we can to cut costs.
Your legal costs.
Yeah, that's,
Our legal costs will be going down.
thank you for that. I was just getting ready to ask that. On your budget here, it's showing an increase in outside legal of $312,000.
So I'll tell you, this was submitted before the current situation.
Mm-hmm.
So the hope is moving forward, our legal costs will be significantly lower. And hopefully it'll be before the next fiscal year. So that will save money there.
When I did that, it was based on the projection for this year, which is about 1.1 million.
We're also saving $240,000 a year because we're not doing COVID testing. I went to the judge myself and had a conversation and said, this is not, we can't sustain this.
Well, and it seems like all of these efforts that you're obviously making are going to help offset some of the other things that are going to be increasing, like utility costs and, and supplies.
Yeah.
Supply chain issues, inflation, those sorts of things. So it sounds like she's saving some in M&O that will kind of help balance some of the things in M&O. But overall, as far as salaries and benefits are concerned, that's kind of a different conversation.
And I know we're talking about this year coming up.
Yeah.
But my focus too is not only this year, but moving forward, even with the new jail as we talked about.
I don't know that we have a sufficient tax base to offer you revenue that you need, even in a new jail. That's a concern that I have.
That's a concern of mine too.
So,
One of my hopes is that maybe we don't need 409 staff members because the building is built differently and we can be more efficient. Maybe that's what that looks like. Maybe we can form partnerships with other entities that are willing to pay, a lease or lease out some of the space that we build for services for our inmates. I mean, there's some options there, but you're right. That is very concerning to me.
yeah, because I know we've talked about it the last 2 or 3 years of there needs to be some additional revenue source. I think that's kind of where we always come to the end of our conclusions is we need more money. Where does that come from?
I'd like to say 3 things, and hope I can remember them all. That's how my mind works. But the first thing is, I actually really appreciate the budget coming across in this format, just because of mere exposure. Previously, I like that I like the line items and stuff that were given, but it's just unfamiliar to us. So I actually really appreciate this.
Thank you, Micah, for working on that.
Yeah. and I know since you're in this line, it's a little bit harder to probably pull the numbers than it is for somebody like the rest of us, where it's all pretty neatly stuck into a nice little bucket. The second thing is, I fully empathize with where you're at. At least around this particular horseshoe, I've been in your exact position. So at one point, so I fully empathize with that. And 3, I was just going to say, at least for the group, again, historically being in her position, I understand why she's asked for 409 staff. You can't just snub the report of a grand jury. We were in that same position when we had DOJ breathing on our neck, which is why we came in and asked for 460 or whatever the number was at that particular time. Regardless of whether we get it or not, I understand why she's asking for it, regardless of whether you can fund it or get to those positions. So I do understand why, because Verlin Deerenwater, when he was a DOJ attorney, was rather, even though I could probably beat him up, he still had the illegal ability to hammer us. And so I fully empathize and understand.
Thank you.
Yeah. So and again, I don't have maybe near as experience as you, but I got 15 years in that specific jail, so I know. So it's for whatever that's worth, and I've remembered all 3. So that's I'm happy about that. So
I think he needs more time.
Thank you, I
Yeah, we all understand that there is a need, totally. Yeah. It's just how do we meet the need when the county has limited resources? We only have so much more each year. We got to start having those conversations about those other funding sources, and not so that necessarily the county can say, "Oh, we're going to save money and not, do whatever." That's not the point. The point is we need to at least find some sources that can get you that extra 14, 15, $20 million, so that not only are you able to meet these needs that you have, but you can also grow and increase programming and increase all kinds of things that you could do, the wishes beyond the wants, right? And I think everybody around the table would say, we wish that we had the money to meet your wants, but we just don't. I don't see it. We haven't in the past, I'll say that. But that doesn't mean that we can't all try to work together to try to find those other sources that are out there that can help bridge the gap so that you're not having to have the struggles that you have.
Will be bigger conversations moving forward. Need to be bigger conversations. So.
Is there any other discussion? So what we decided when we started this process a couple days ago is we're taking the approach, because we don't have our final numbers until the end of the summer. That's why we do the September supplement. We are by and large going, now budget board may tell us otherwise, but the approach that BET is wanting to take is what we've done the last couple years, which is a standstill budget, just kind of flat. And then we're looking at kind of like last year when, I was talking to Brian in here and going through all these numbers. And then I said, but even though we're staying flat, I understand and recognize you got increase in medical contract, you got increase in, food and a couple of other known bills. So in September, we funded those, and we may take that same approach and wait until September to do those. We may do it now in July. I don't know, but we're looking at individual things that may be, if it's absolutely needed, and we think we're comfortable that we'll have that budgetary ability to meet that for the entire fiscal year. We may do a little bit here in July, but by and large, our recommendation to budget board is going to be a flat budget to start the year, and then see where we're at in September with the supplement.
If I may,
Yes.
if you look at any report that has ever come through, that is negative, it comes down to one thing, and that is staffing. If you consider nothing else, I am asking that you please consider giving us the 8.5% that the rest of the county got, for me to at least retain the staff that we have.
Well, the rest of the county didn't get it. All the county employees were approved, but 35 out of the 40 roughly District 1 employees we did not receive 8.5% for 35 of our 40 employees. We paid for that out of our special revenue account for those employees that were paid there. Treasurer's office did the same thing. Assessor's office, sheriff's office.
It's
D2,
a common
D3.
misconception when we vote on an 8.5% COLA, we're just talking about those related to the general fund. So the special revenue funds, like the highway funds, have to take it upon themselves to absorb that.
I get that. And however it came about, if there's any discussion to be had about an increase, that would be it for me. I need to put that out there.
Okay. And what I would like to see is the jail trust and you guys talking about, hey, we need an 8.5% COLA. What other where else can we go to find this money besides just the county? In 3 years, and I've missed a few meetings, so I may be off, but I don't recall ever hearing one conversation about that from the jail trust, ever. No conversations about where else besides the current funding streams can we go and find this money as well. So if we could maybe start having those conversations, I think it would be helpful.
I have one comment on the 8.5 as well. I'd like to look at, since the trust has taken over, you mentioned the 10 in January 21, 10%. Countywide, that was nowhere close to anywhere of a 10%, first of all. Then I heard another 3%, you're at 13. Our last 2 years is 13.5 combined. So when there's years that there's 10 and our county employees are saying, hey, we only got a 3%. I mean, I'd like to see that trend side by side and see where we really stand. If we're gonna throw it out there that, hey, the county got 8.5, we want 8.5. We need to do it on a trend.
I think you need to also do, they were starting way behind. I mean, historically,
yes,
their pay rate.
They were getting everything countywide up until they took over.
No, I mean competitively.
Well, but Tim, we all deal with that.
Juvenile,
but
and
we
so
all,
was the clerk's office. We dealt with pay equity.
All of our offices deal with that. Our IT department, we were talking about that yesterday. We've got IT folks in there that could make $80,000 more a year going across the street. Some of them even just going over to Oklahoma City could make a significant amount more money. We are dealing with.
I get it.
We are dealing with that.
Nature of the work.
But okay, so you're going to tell the treasurer's office that has a constitutional requirement to perform their function as well. We've got constitutional officers that all have
I know,
functions.
but the trust came in with, I mean, Brandon can tell you, the sheriff has always been asking for more pay to be competitive. So the trust was coming in behind that.
I understand, but when the court clerk came in, he was asking for more money too because his employees were not paid what they could be making elsewhere in the pay parity. The assessor's office and the treasurer's office can say the exact same thing. There's been not the treasurer's office as far as a new elected official, but there's new elected officials besides District 2 and the treasurer's office that have come in over the last, 6-8 years that all have employees that are performing vital functions to the county that are not making what they could make. They're making significantly less than what they can make in the outside world. Our facilities department that keeps all of this stuff running and making sure that we have lights and that everything is working, we can't hardly retain employees and go out and recruit more because we don't have the money to pay them.
No, I get it. I'm just the historical is.
But I'm just saying the historical is the same
I
for
know, but
everybody.
they're picking up someone else's stuff. The trust.
But that's my
in
point.
With the deficit.
But that's my point. The court clerk picked up somebody else's stuff. Larry Stein picked up somebody else's stuff, 4.5 years ago. Tommy picked up, a historically, underfunded department. Commissioner Bloomer came in a little over 4 years ago, inherited the same thing. Miles is a new elected official. He's, coming in and, he has yard employees that don't make as much as they could if they were driving a truck for an oil and gas company or something like that. The new county clerk.
I get it.
So I'm just saying that we can't just look at it in a vacuum, kind of like what Christy was just saying about the 8.5%. If we're going to talk about it, let's compare apples to apples. And I'm just saying that while I agree that they are dealing with, pay issues and that kind of stuff, I'm just saying that it is not unique to their organization.
Can I
as
just
it relates
say,
to the county.
the reason I'm asking is not to do the apples to apples. What I'm asking for is my employees, because they can go to the juvenile center right now and they can work and make a higher starting pay than what we're making right now. And they can deal with at most 90, 100 people, inmates that are not even close to being as dangerous as the ones that we're dealing with now. And that's what I'm asking for. And that is it.
Well, our juvenile department, I think, is a little bit different now. I mean, according to Brandon, some of the folks that they have over there now are.
I'm just saying, I have people considering leaving to go to the juvenile department just because they did get this
Yeah.
the delay.
I get that.
It was that same scenario.
And that's what I'm getting back to is you guys need to find other sources of revenue as well instead of. And I understand you're new in this position, and I think you are going to try to find other sources, but it's not like we are just hoarding cash back here and not giving you the money. So only coming and looking at this as the revenue stream, because I know you're trying to take care of your employees, and I appreciate that, and I think that is great. I just think that there needs to be a full conversation about what other opportunities there are to get the money for the 8.5% and to get the money for any other growth beyond what the county, because already you're at about a third of the budget, of the county budget. So it's just
How
about,
much liability do we incur for the county?
well, that depends. So.
What
But you are a separate entity, a separate organization that runs themselves. You guys control your liability based upon the way you guys do business. And we can't just sit there and continue on the county is going to be able to find $8, 10, 12, $14 million more in our budget.
One thing that I might, as a suggestion, so last year, I don't think you were in here when I did my budget presentation today, but last year, the sheriff's office had come in and we had asked for additional money. And so maybe, because I understand, treasurer does very different work, or district clerks do very different work, you all do very different work that even maybe we do. One of the things that I tried to do last year was I steered away from, well, I know the assessor and the treasurer has gotten X, Y, and Z, or in this case, the rest of the county's got 8.5%. Maybe in that you could take to the trust or to whatever appropriate body, use some of your experience and your contacts and reach out to people who do life work. So maybe find out what does Cleveland start at, what does Canadian start at. I think
have that information.
Yeah.
I know we're in here.
yeah.
Or do you know we're near Cleveland?
No, I mean, they're making 39 to 40 right now. Canadian County, what did they start out at?
Canadian
I think
38 something.
38.
Because last year when we had this conversation, when you guys brought the information but didn't bring Cleveland County,
But again,
Cleveland County was $100, starting pay was $100 less than what we were starting at. But I understand what Brandon's saying, but I'm trying to say, I'm not arguing that your employees shouldn't get 8.5%, that your employees shouldn't get more money. I'm not arguing that at all. I agree with you. I'm just saying that we need to try to find it other places besides just the county, because we've looked at it in the past and tried, and we have very limited resources to be able to meet additional needs. I'm not saying you don't need it. Not at all. That's not what.
I know. I had to one last lob at you to say, hey, if you're considering anything at all with this, this is my focus.
Okay.
That's what it was about.
Did you? We asked for that, and you gave it at the end. Thank you. That was really what you were. I heard you asking. She gave that answer. Is hey, if you had to have a priority, here was. Right. She finished with that.
A couple one of the things I was going to say with the breakdown of how this is, I like how you broke it down your rank structure, and it's not kind of all thrown into one mix, which I appreciate that. So one question I did have was, like, on your detention officers, which obviously is the meat and potatoes of what you do, and I get that. Of those people, do y'all have, because we did, are there detention officers that maybe make a different amount of money based on their longevity? And the reason I ask is because if you take like the 3.847 and you divide that by the number of 96 FTEs, that means that on average those DOs are starting out over 40,000. So I was just concerned.
There's cadets.
Right.
Cadets make less. That's what they start out at.
Okay.
That's trying to get people through the door, right?
Okay.
And that number is far less than what a detention officer would make. They'd have to have good standing. They would have to have good performance and be there for a period of time. Yeah. Okay. Now, what I can say is that moving forward, I'm looking at creating levels within these positions just to kind of keep moving that carrot forward, to help with retention and to help them feel like they are progressing in their career, because they do top out at sergeant and or detention officer or corporal, and then they're stuck there for a while.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great idea. And one thing that I had mentioned to Mr. Williams last time when he was here related to his budget was some of the employee costs. If you guys haven't had folks go sit on detainees when they're in the hospital and having to pay for that, I had suggested that he reach out to the sheriff's office, not to put you on the spot again. I don't know if it's possible, but their reserve deputies used to do that. I don't know if that's something that could happen, save you some money, but I would have some of those conversations just to see if it is possible.
I'm willing to have that conversation.
And then that related to the 320, and I know you wouldn't be necessarily privy to this, but you may be able to ask. I've asked Mr. Tardibono, and he doesn't have it, but Mr. Parker, David Parker, was hired as a.
I got it finally.
Okay, can you get that to us? It was
It wasn't. I didn't have it.
A staffing report and analysis of what could be done. So I'd like to see that.
Brandon, did you complete your thought about the suggestion to her as far as?
Yeah,
okay.
just and I mean, and I just to make sure that, because again, it's totally different works, and you know that. I mean, if there's other like size facilities, like when I was, I used to say this at one point in here. I mean, several counties they may do that to you now still, but they would reach out and they would do salary surveys because their FOPs are bargaining, in the middle of their bargaining, their collective bargaining agreements and stuff. They'd reach out. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times these places would reach out and they would reply, "We really appreciate your time and effort, but you're such a statistically low outlier. We're going to have to throw you out." I mean, it's so far below the standard deviation, so we can't even use your data. So I mean, again, when I say I empathize, like I legitimately mean that. I've got no reason to give you lip service. I legitimately mean I empathize. Because I guarantee I could produce some of those emails. I used to frame them because I thought it was hilarious. I mean, places like Douglas County said, "Thanks for your data, but it's entirely useless for what we need." And so
So that 8.5% may not be a true representative. No, I think that matters.
Well, I mean, for fear of throwing more charcoal, lighter fluid on the fire, that's another thing I was going with that. I mean, I would imagine that 8.5% is not enough to even get you up to what the relative national standard is on that. I understand. So that was more so where I was going, that if there were ever talks, to everybody's point, Cody's point, everybody's point, if there were ever talks in the future about why the county would need some sort of supplemental income, I mean, it's very difficult in my mind to have these things aren't mutually exclusive. You can't have a jail that runs tip-top without additional funding, and nobody in here doesn't know that. So I think that it's, being able to hurl as much ammunition towards something as possible is by far the best way to overcome it. And I think that if it were to ever go to the voters, having every bit of data there is key for everybody. So, again, some of the salary surveys that people send in, that these are independent organizations. This isn't somebody at a sheriff's office doing these things. These are independent, highly paid salary survey companies to do these things. And it's pretty comical, some of the responses I've gotten. So, a very, very polite way of saying, hey, we can't use that crap. I'll throw you off my email list for next year.
That's right.
So, it's pretty comical in a terrible way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, I did.
Are there any other questions?
Bottom line is, we're gonna have the same conversation in September.
Probably.
But in the meantime, the common theme I heard was other revenue sources. The jail trust can expound on that. That would certainly help alleviate the pressure of us satisfying the bottom line that we need to operate.
Yeah, it's hard for us because we want to. Oh, I want to.
We want to.
And I think when I said we, I think I can speak for everybody. We want you guys to have more money for your staff and to have, the new computer systems and the new cameras and we want you to have a state-of-the-art facility with trained state-of-the-art employees. We want that for you. We just are very limited on what we can do.
For this county.
I'm sorry?
Not for me, for this county.
Well, when I say for you, I mean for the jail trust in the jail. So we want you to be able to accomplish that. And we're not trying to be an impediment to that, but we just have to consider everything else and, just do what we can, so.
Understand?
Are there any other questions? I appreciate you guys' time and
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
you're doing a great job. We've had to reach out to you a couple times and you've been very, very helpful. I see a lot of positive things under your leadership, so
yes,
good job.
everyone does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Motion to receive report.
Second.
Got a motion and duly seconds.
I've just been letting them do all that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is that? Have we done all of them except for workers' comp and whatnot?
Yeah.
Okay. Discussion possible action, item 28 regarding follow-up questions to any estimated needs that have already been presented. Is there any questions about any of the others? If not, item 29, are there any policies, processes, or procedures anybody wants to discuss at this time? If not, we are not at the point of making a recommendation yet. So we'll go to citizens participation. Any citizens to participate? Seeing none, board comments, District 2,
No, thank you.
District 3,
None.
clerk,
No, thank you.
treasurer, court clerk, assessor.
Great conversations today. I think more need to be had.
Sure.
They're going back on up.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Randy? Thank you.
He's
Throw it back
reminding me
on
to
loud.
turn my phone.
I said regardless of what meeting, I'm gonna say that. If I'm in a retirement board, he's out there, yeah, Cody, can you turn the phone back on loud?
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Second.
There's a motion second, all those